Chapter 2153. The wind blows before the storm, such powerful strength. He just advanced to the 5th step of the Void Sky realm, and the aura he is revealing isn't any weaker than the 7th step of the Void Sky realm. He is truly a freak. Emotion muttered with a fearful gaze. This should be related to the fact that his doppelganger is Devour. After all, his doppelganger should have subtly influenced his original body, making his original body much stronger than ordinary cultivators, Emoji said. Magatama nodded. Just as he was about to speak, his eyes suddenly narrowed. Old ancestor, what's wrong? Emoji noticed that Magatama's expression was strange and asked. The scouts at the border sent news that Ling Binbing has returned. It is said that 6 sects have come with him this time, Magatama said in a deep voice. 6 sects? It seems that all the other sects have come except for Half Moon Hall? Emoji's expression changed slightly. Open the defensive array, Magatama said and made a hand seal, ordering the disciples of the sect to preside over the defensive array. Jun also noticed the abnormality. He put away the illusory heavenly bridge and flew towards Magatama, asking, Senior, what happened? Ling Binbing has returned. Besides Half Moon Hall, the other 6 sects have also sent people. I'm afraid this matter is going to be a little tricky, Magatama said in a deep voice. Jun narrowed his eyes and sneered in his heart. In fact, he had long known that apart from Half Moon Hall and Heavenly Demon Island, the other 8 sects would target him. He had already destroyed the Dark Illusion sect and High Heaven sect on his trip to Dongyu, but he still could not intimidate the remaining 6 sects. So, don't blame him, Jun, for being ruthless. Zhou Xiaoyu, I think you should run away first. Although not all the old ancestors of the 6 sects have come, according to the news from the scouts, at least 3 old ancestors have been persuaded by Ling Binbing to come, Magatama advised. Which 3? Jun asked. Magatama shook his head and said, I'm not sure. Jun pondered for a moment and said, Senior, I plan to stay here first. I need to know which 3 ancestors stayed behind so that my next plan can be carried out successfully. Magatama shook his head helplessly and said, This is too risky. In fact, you can completely escape the star field. There's no need to fight with those sects head-on. After all, the forces by your side are not small. None of the 10 great sects can take you down. However, Zhuwen shook his head and said, Senior, in my hometown, there is a common saying. When you face a ferocious beast that is stronger than you, you cannot retreat. The more you retreat, the more the ferocious beast will take advantage of you. In the end, it will attack you endlessly. Magatama was stunned. What Zhuwen said was not unreasonable, and he had nothing to say. They're here. Magatama raised his head and noticed several streams of light in the distance and sighed softly. He knew that it was too late for Zhuwen to leave now. However, Zhuwen was not depressed at all. Instead, he looked at the streams of light that stopped outside Heavenly Demon Island's starry sky with bright eyes. These were 6 extremely huge airships, each of which was dozens of times larger than the divine armament Zhuwen obtained in the past. Universe Sect, Void Cleansing Peak, Demon Pearl Sect, Qi Refining Sword Sect, White Jade Pavilion, and Flower Butterfly Valley. Yun looked at the symbols on the 6 airships and read out the names of the forces they belonged to word by word, his voice low and filled with killing intent. From the 6 airships, more than a dozen figures walked out, 4 of them standing at the front. One of them was not unfamiliar to Zhuwen. It was High Heaven Sect's old ancestor, Ling Binbing. The other 3 figures were 2 men and a woman. One of them was a white-haired Taoist priest, one of them was a middle-aged man with golden eyes, and the last one was a beautiful young woman who wore a dress with a dancing butterfly pattern. Although Zhuwen did not know these 3 people, he could guess their identities at a glance. The white-haired Taoist priest should be Void Cleansing Peak's old ancestor, Fu Yuz. The middle-aged man with golden eyes should be Universe Sect's old ancestor, Qin Changxing, and the beautiful young woman should be Demon Pearl Sect's old ancestor, Yang Zhonghui. The reason Zhuwen could guess their identities was naturally because the 3 people standing behind them were Void Cleansing Peak's Sect Master, Fu Feiping, Universe Sect's Sect Master, Qin Yongzhang, and Demon Pearl Sect's Sect Master, Yang Muqiu. That bitch Yang Muqiu actually has the face to come to Heavenly Demon Island. Emoji's eyes were gloomy as he looked at Yang Muqiu standing behind Yang Zhonghui. Back then, their Heavenly Demon Island's demonic Tao scripture was stolen because of Yang Muqiu. Moreover, Yang Muqiu had also deceived Emoji's feelings. It could be said that Emoji's hatred for Yang Muqiu was extremely deep. Yang Muqiu obviously saw Emoji's hostility and a hint of disdain appeared at the corner of her mouth, but she did not pay much attention to him. Fu Yuz, Chen Changxing, and Yang Zhonghui all looked at Ling Binbing. Ling Binbing nodded knowingly and slowly walked out. He saw Juan next to Magatama at a glance and said coldly, "Brother Magatama, you protected a thief and destroyed my high heaven sect. Do you know your crime?" "No, my ass. Ling Binbing, who do you think you are? Do you have the right to judge me? If you're not convinced, come over here and let's spar." Mo Tian unexpectedly burst out with vulgarities, which caused Ling Binbing's expression to turn unsightly and ashen from anger. "You've got guts. Today, the 6 great sects are all here. If your Heavenly Demon Island doesn't want to be destroyed, you'd better hand over Jun." Ling Binbing left behind a ruthless statement, but he didn't rush up to fight with Mo Tian. Although Ling Binbing and Magatama were both cultivators at the 8 Steps Void Heaven realm, Ling Binbing admitted that he was no match for Magatama, who was a demonic cultivator, in a real fight. "Just a coward." Devil Sky snorted coldly with disdain, and then he looked at Fu Yu's group of 3 and said, "The 3 of you are the ancestors of a sect at any rate. Are you willing to listen to the orders of this trash, Ling Binbing?" Ling Binbing was so angry that he roared, "Magatama, don't go too far." "Io, don't be so angry, you two." Yang Zhonghui suddenly laughed and broke the deadlock. "Actually, we didn't come here to cause trouble for your Heavenly Demon Island. As long as Big Brother Magatama hands over Zhuowen, we will immediately withdraw. As for the grievances between your sect and High Heaven sect, we will definitely not interfere. Junior Sister Yang is right. The grievances between your sects have nothing to do with us. We only want Zhuowen," Chen Changxing said with a smile. Fu Yuz was a man of few words, nodding and saying, "Hand over Jun." Ling Binbing's face was filled with embarrassment and anger. When he went to their sects to lobby them, these 3 people smiled at him and promised to help him seek justice. Now that they were on Heavenly Demon Island, they immediately forgot about their promise to him. How could Ling Binbing not be angry? But no matter how unhappy Ling Binbing was, he didn't dare to say anything. He was now all alone. High Heaven sect had been destroyed and he was now at odds with Heavenly Demon Island. If he angered the 3 people beside him, he would really have no place in the star field in the future. Magatama frowned slightly and couldn't help but look at Zhuowen beside him, obviously letting Zhuowen make the decision. "Senior, let me handle the rest." Saying so, Zhuowen took the lead and stood at the edge of the protective array. He looked at the higher-ups of the 6 great sects and said, "Your grandpa Zhuar is here. If you have the guts, come and bite me." Chapter 2154. Duel. The upper echelons of the 6 great sects all had ugly expressions. They looked at Zhuowen as if they were looking at an idiot. "Zhuowen, do you think you're invincible just because you have an 8th step Void Heaven expert backing you?" Chen Changxing laughed out of extreme anger. Yang Zhonghui laughed. "Although there's nothing wrong with being young and impetuous, you're just an ant. Do you really think you have the right to be arrogant in front of us?" Fu Yuz only looked at Zhuowen with a cold smile. Although he didn't say a word, the disdain in his eyes was extremely obvious. "Little bastard, all you can do is bark like a pitiful dog within Heavenly Demon Island's protective array. If you have the guts, then come out. Don't accidentally drag Heavenly Demon Island down with you," Ling Binbing said in an eccentric tone. Many disciples of the Heavenly Devil Island revealed strange expressions. They looked at Magatama and Mara in confusion. Some of them even muttered softly that they shouldn't have let Zhuowen enter the Heavenly Devil Island. Zhuowen knew that Ling Binbing was trying to drive a wedge between him and the Heavenly Devil Island. However, he didn't plan to stay on the Heavenly Devil Island in the first place. "Old bastard, I'm about to come out and take your dog life. Are you willing to duel with me?" Unexpectedly, not only did Zhuowen not shrink back, He actually raised the condition of fighting Ling Binbing one-on-one. The surroundings were in an uproar as all of them felt that Zhuowen was too arrogant and conceited, and it was even to the extent that he was courting death. Ling Binbing was also stunned. He clearly didn't expect Zhuowen to actually come out and fight him alone. What was the difference between this and suicide? Old dog, you don't dare? Zhuowen's indifferent voice sounded again, interrupting Ling Binbing's wild thoughts. Since you're courting death, I'll fulfill your wish. Then get out here right now, Ling Binbing sneered. However, Ling didn't move. He said, you have so many people around you. Who can guarantee that they won't attack when I come out? I promise. Ling Binbing replied. What's the use of your guarantee? You want to fight me one-on-one? Sure, but those fellows beside you had better stay far away. Also, you have to swear to the heavenly Tao that there will not be a second person interfering with our battle, Tuan said. Ling Binbing frowned slightly. Soon after, he looked towards Chen Chongqing and the other two beside him. Clearly, he was seeking their opinions. Chen Chongqing sneered, you want us to stay away, then what about your servants? I heard from Sect Master Ling that you have a servant who is also a Void Sky 8 Steps expert. If your servant interferes when you two are fighting, wouldn't it be very unfair? Zhuowen smiled and sent a message to the King Spirit. The King Spirit then flew behind Zhuowen. He is my servant, the King Spirit. His cultivation has reached the Void Sky 8 Steps. When I fight with Old Dog Ling, he will also keep a safe distance from me. Also, what is this Old Dog Ling's cultivation and what is my cultivation? Why is he so cautious? Is he afraid of me? Zhuowen boasted shamelessly. Ling Binbing was furious in his heart when he heard Zhuowen call him an old dog. He said, little bastard, I only need one move to kill you. Even if this servant of yours is by your side, I will still be able to kill you. If you wish to seek death, why don't you come out now? Zhuowen sneered and ignored Ling Binbing. Instead, he looked at Chen Chongqing and the other two and said, the three of you, although I have a servant who is at the Void Sky 8 Steps, compared to your 6 great sects, the gap is still too big. You came here just for the heavenly star essence on me, right? I still have a lot of it. The three of you came all the way here, so please take it as a gift from me. After saying that, Yun threw out 3 jade bottles. Chen Chongqing took them and opened the corks. He found that there were 5 drops of heavenly star essence inside. He nodded and his expression eased a lot. Little friend Zhua, I will gladly accept this gift, but I heard that you have more heavenly domain starry sky essence than this, right? Chen Chongqing put away the jade bottle and asked shamelessly. Zhuowen's eyes became colder and colder. He cupped his hands and said, of course, I still have a lot of reserves. It's just that there is a big grudge between me and this old dog Ling. I want to solve the grudge between me and him first, then I will give you the rest of the heavenly star essence. It's just that I am not happy to see this old dog's face, so, Ling Binbing was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. Zhuowen was really ruthless. You three, don't listen to this little bastard's nonsense. He must be stalling for time. Maybe he is plotting something, Ling Binbing hurriedly explained, but he was interrupted by Yang Zhonghui. Yang Zhonghui smiled and said, I think this little brother is very good at dealing with people. Let's wait until the grudge between him and Brother Ling is solved first. Anyway, I have plenty of time. Okay, a person should have a clear mind. The matter of the heavenly star essence is not urgent. Zhuo Xiaoyu can solve the grudge first. Chen Chongqing laughed. Fu Yuz nodded and did not say anything. Then thank you very much. This is the territory of the heavenly demon island, so it is not suitable for a battle. Otherwise, it will disturb the cultivators of the heavenly demon island. How about this? Let's go to the ruins of the Serene Illusion sect. It is much more spacious there. Zhuowen grinned. Chen Chongqing and the other two naturally had no objection, but Ling Binbing was so angry that his face turned ashen. Ling Binbing felt very uncomfortable, especially when he saw how quickly Chen Chongqing and the other two changed their faces. Magatama narrowed his eyes and glanced at Zhuowen, revealing a thoughtful expression. Zhuo Xiaoyu, I'll go with you. Magatama rushed to Zhuowen's side and said. Zhuowen shook his head and transmitted his voice to Magatama. Senior, I think you have also guessed my next plan. I will take my leave now. With that, Yun led Di Ling, Old Man Qing, and the others into the flying ship, turning into a streak of light and disappearing from the heavenly demon island. Meanwhile, Ling Binbing, Qin Changxing, and the other two led the upper echelons of the six great sects and followed closely behind Zhuowen's flying ship, afraid that Zhuowen would do something to escape. While Zhuowen and the others were on their way to the Dark Mirage sect, many cultivators in the Eastern Universe had learned of the duel between Zhuowen and Ling Binbing. Cultivators from all over the Eastern Universe had made their way to the old site of the Dark Mirage sect. Several days later, Zhuowen's group arrived at the former site of the Serene Illusion sect. At this moment, the Serene Illusion sect no longer possessed its former prosperity and liveliness. Replacing it was a desolate land filled with weeds. Even many of the smaller organizations around the Serene Illusion sect had moved away due to the disappearance of the Serene Illusion sect. It could be said that the planet where the Serene Illusion sect resided had completely become a dead zone. However, as the news of the battle between Zhuowen and Ling Binbing spread, the dead continent finally gained some life. Many cultivators hurried to the continent long ago and set up camp, waiting for the arrival of Zhuowen and Ling Binbing's group. They're here. That's Zhuowen's flying ship. I've seen it before. There are 6 other flying ships behind it. They belong to the Cosmic Sect, the Void Rush Peak, and the other sects that have come to the Eastern Universe this time. Chapter 2155. Fighting in 8 steps Void Sky. The flying ship stopped above the ruins of the Dark Illusion sect, and Jun led Di Ling, Old Man Wu Qing, and the others off the flying ship. The flying ship of the 6 great sects also stopped near Zhuowen in the next second, and Ling Binbing, Qin Changxing, Yang Zhonghui, and Fu Yuz led a dozen or so higher-ups down. Zhuo Xiaoyu, I hope you are a man of your word. After you settle your grudge with Sect Master Ling, you'd better obediently hand over the heavenly domain star essence, Qin Changxing said with a fake smile. Yang Zhonghui and Fu Yuz also looked coldly at Jun. As far as the 3 of them were concerned, Zhuowen would undoubtedly die in this one-on-one battle. Although these words were meant for Zhuowen, they were actually also meant for Ling Binbing. If Zhuowen died, his spirit ring would definitely be taken by Ling Binbing, so the 3 of them were mainly on guard against Ling Binbing escaping with the treasure. Zhuowen didn't reply at all. From the expressions of Qin Changxing and the other 2, he could tell that they didn't take him seriously at all. Or it could be said that as far as they were concerned, he, Zhuowen, would definitely lose this one-on-one battle. The reason why Zhuowen proposed this duel was mainly to test how strong he was now, and whether he had the strength to fight an 8 steps Void Sky cultivator. Ling Binbing grinned and took a step forward, leaping into the sky above the Dark Illusion sect, looking down at Zhuowen and saying, "Little bastard, come up and die." It's the ancestor of High Heaven sect, Ling Binbing. It seems that the rumors are true. Zhuowen and Ling Binbing are really planning to duel. Is this Zhuowen seeking death? Looking at his aura, he is only at the 5th step Void Sky, but he dares to challenge an 8th step Void Sky ancestor? Who knows? Perhaps he really is courting death. There is no suspense in this battle. This Zhuowen will definitely end tragically. Discussions broke out all around. Many of the cultivators who had rushed here looked back and forth between Zhuowen and Ling Binbing. Most of them felt that Zhuowen was courting death. Zhuowen raised his head. His eyes were as calm as an ancient well as he said, "Bastard, who are you calling?" "The bastard is calling you," Ling Binbing said subconsciously. Zhuowen replied with a smile, "Oh, so it's the bastard calling me." As soon as he said this, Ling Binbing realized that something was wrong. This Zhuowen was indirectly calling him a bastard. "You have a sharp tongue, but only know how to move your mouth. Now that we're at the Dark Mirage sect, you don't dare to come out and fight?" Ling Binbing calmed down and mocked. "On the contrary, I plan to take your dog life today." Zhuowen took a step forward and leaped not far in front of Ling Binbing. Then you can die." Ling Binbing grinned, his eyes filled with killing intent as he locked onto Zhuowen. Just as he was about to charge at Zhuowen, he was stopped by Zhuowen. "What's wrong? Do you regret fighting with me?" Ling Binbing said coldly. However, Zhuowen ignored Ling Binbing and looked at Qin Yongxing and the others nearby. "Seniors, can you stay 1,000,000 kilometers away from here?" Chen Yongxing and the others exchanged glances and discussed for a while before nodding. They kept their promise and retreated 1,000,000 kilometers away. "Tell your men to retreat as well," Ling Binbing said. Wen gestured to the Emperor's spirit. The Emperor's spirit followed Old Man Wu Qing and the others and retreated 1,000,000 kilometers away, silently watching the battle that was about to take place above the Dark Mirage sect. "Hee, I'll finish you in one move." At this moment, Ling Binbing did not have any worries. He released his killing intent completely and charged at Zhuan like a ferocious beast. Before the person arrived, the fist was already a step ahead. Ling Binbing was worthy of being called an 8th-step void sky expert. His fist energy condensed into an incomparably huge lightning domain. The terrifying lightning tribulation of the immortal world rumbled as it struck down. Each bolt was as thick as a giant dragon. As expected of an expert of the 8 steps void sky. This fist is so terrifying. That's the power of the thunder punishment of the immortal world. Any one of the thunderbolts can consign me to eternal damnation. Many of the onlooking cultivators looked at the shocking scene in the sky. Their hearts trembled, and their pupils shrank to the size of needles. They were even more in awe of Ling Binbing. Zhuan grasped the void with his right hand, and the glorious purple galaxy sword appeared in his hand. He slashed out with the sword, and the void distorted and trembled, almost collapsing. The sword light turned into a huge illusory domain, which was no smaller than the thunder punishment of the immortal world. This move was the 6th move of the Tao of Destruction sword art, the Heavenly Tao domain. It had a powerful force that could uproot mountains. Boom, boom. The thunder punishment of the immortal world was very powerful. The Heavenly Tao domain only lasted for 3 breaths of time before it completely dissipated. Yun was not afraid at all. He grabbed the void with his left hand, and dense purple energy gushed out, condensing into a slender purple sword. With the 2 swords in hand, Zhuo Wen's entire body was like a spinning top as he continuously danced in the air. The 2 swords were like water ripples as they followed Zhuo Wen's movements. Beams of sword light shot out from the 2 swords, shattering the lightning bolts one after another. When Zhuan destroyed the last thunderbolt, the thunder punishment of the immortal world completely collapsed, and Ling Binbing's fist energy also completely disappeared. He blocked it. This Zhuan is very strong. He's only at the 5 steps void sky realm, but he actually blocked the attack of the 8 steps void sky realm. Everyone looked at the white-clothed youth and couldn't help but discuss. We've underestimated this kid. No wonder he dared to challenge Ling Binbing. It turns out that he's this strong. Millions of miles away, Chen Changsheng frowned slightly. He was slightly surprised that Zhuan could actually block Ling Binbing's fist. This kid is indeed a little unusual. However, the gap between the 5 steps void sky realm and the 8 steps void sky realm is very big. Moreover, Ling Binbing just casually attacked. If Ling Binbing was serious, Yuan would have already fallen. Yang Zhonghui smiled. Fu Yuz, who was silent, spoke for the first time. Let's discuss how to distribute the heavenly domain's starry sky essence. Zhuan is definitely going to die. Even if he doesn't die, I don't plan to let him live. However, that old man Ling Binbing might have some devious ideas. Yang Zhonghui and Chen Changxing both revealed serious expressions. Yang Zhonghui said, "Be wary of Ling Binbing. After Zhuan is killed by Ling Binbing, we'll immediately act and seal off the surroundings to prevent Ling Binbing from escaping. With the strength of the 3 of us, Ling Binbing won't dare to escape alone." Brother Yang's words are reasonable. Ling Binbing's strength isn't considered strong among the old ancestors of the 8 great sects, and he doesn't have a secondary heaven-shattering divine artifact. How can he compare to us? If he wants to take it all for himself, he's just courting death. Yang Zhonghui sneered. I hope Ling Binbing can be a little smarter. Fu Yuz nodded and said solemnly. Look, Ling Binbing should be getting serious. This Yuan shouldn't be able to live for much longer. Yang Zhonghui suddenly said. Fu Yuz and Chen Changxing both looked up. They saw that in the sky above the Serene Illusion sect, the moment Zhuan broke Ling Binbing's fist, Ling Binbing attacked again. Chapter 2156. Real god of thunder and fire Ling Binbing instantly appeared in front of Zhuan and swung the awl in his right hand mercilessly. The awl streaked across the void and formed dense green lightning arcs. Zhuan raised the glorious purple galaxy sword in his right hand to block the green lightning awl. Boom! However, the moment the divine sword and the awl collided, Zhuan was surprised to find that the dense green lightning on the surface of the awl was like maggots that followed the glorious purple galaxy sword and entered Zhuan's body. The green lightning was extremely terrifying. After entering Zhuan's body, it went straight into his spiritual space and tried to destroy his spiritual soul. Zhuan's spiritual soul was extremely strong. The moment the green lightning entered his spiritual space, it was annihilated by his powerful spiritual soul. Ling Binbing also noticed that Zhuan's expression did not change and was surprised. The green lightning on his awl was not ordinary. It was a strange lightning that targeted the spiritual soul. Most of the cultivators who fought with him for the first time would be caught off guard and their spiritual soul would be struck by the green lightning, revealing a painful expression. However, Zhuan was expressionless as if the green lightning did not affect him at all. Boom! Boom! Ling Binbing snorted and swung the green lightning all at Zhuan at an extremely fast speed. The terrifying green lightning surrounded the two of them, blurring their figures. Zhuan kept retreating and was completely at a disadvantage. Die! Ling Binbing's right hand tightened and the green lightning all smashed down. The green lightning reached the sky and turned into a lightning pillar, blocking Ling Binbing's back. Ling Binbing used almost all of his strength in this attack and smashed heavily on the glorious purple galaxy sword. Puchi! Zhuan spat out a mouthful of blood. He was shocked to find that the glorious purple galaxy sword in his hand could not withstand this attack and was completely shattered. You're finished. Seeing the glorious purple galaxy sword in Zhuan's hand shattering, Ling Binbing became even more proud. He raised the green lightning all again and smashed it down. This attack was even more terrifying than the previous one. Zhuan narrowed his eyes. He waved his right hand and took out the king's sword. Holding it, he also smashed it on the green lightning awl. Boom! A gust of wind rose between the two of them. The stars in the surrounding starry sky moved like a dream and colorful light appeared. He blocked it. The sky. Ling Binbing's Binbing his god sword art Transen green his art of green lightning all and swept it toward Zhuan's chest. Zhuan took several steps back and stabbed his imperial sword into the ground. He performed a series of hand seals and beams of sword light poured out from his back. More than 9,000 ancient swords shot out again, heading straight for Ling Binbing. Ling Binbing's pupils constricted. He brandished the azure thunder all to block the attacks of the swords as he retreated. Green lightning galaxy. Ling Binbing let out a low roar, and the green lightning all in his hand suddenly scattered out. Terrifying green lightning actually swept out like raindrops, and each of the green lightning bolts manifested into an incomparably huge green lightning star. The densely packed green lightning planets actually formed a small galaxy that revolved around Ling Binbing, blocking the attacks of the swords. However, when Ling Binbing used the green lightning galaxy, an ominous feeling rose in his heart. Suddenly, two divine swords flew out from beneath Ling Binbing's feet. One of the two swords was suffused with black lightning while the other was surging with purple flames. They were both filled with a dense and powerful aura. The two swords were extremely fast. They stabbed towards Ling Binbing's feet, as if they wanted to pierce through Ling Binbing's entire body. Extreme Dao Fire Sword and Extreme Dao Thunder Sword? Ling Binbing's pupils shrank. His feet moved in a profound manner as he hurriedly dodged. However, he had a bad feeling in his heart. He knew clearly that only real God Lei Huo could unleash the two Extreme Dao Divine Swords at the same time. The so-called real god Lei Huo was a powerful real god who had obtained the two extreme energies of Extreme Dao Fire and Extreme Dao Thunder at the same time. Legend had it that a real god who had achieved 3 Extreme Dao realms had a powerful strength comparable to Void Sky 9 steps. However, a real god who had achieved 3 Extreme Dao realms had never appeared before. However, a real god Lei Huo had appeared, and this person was Purple Star Monarch. After Purple Star Monarch became a real god Lei Huo, his fighting strength was heaven-defying. He was actually not weaker than Void Sky 8 steps. He was a figure that the top 10 sects were extremely wary of. However, now Ling Binbing actually saw the two extreme energies of Extreme Dao Fire Sword and Extreme Dao Thunder Sword again. Other than Purple Star Monarch, who else in the Great Brahma Sky domain had reached the level of real God Lei Hua? Just as Ling Binbing's thoughts were running wild, a palm silently appeared behind Ling Binbing. Then, a palm suddenly blasted out. Ling Binbing's expression changed slightly. Without even looking back, he threw the green lightning all in his hand behind him. Rumble! The green lightning exploded. The palm actually took the green lightning all head-on without dodging. Dun, dun, dun. Ling Binbing's expression changed slightly. He only felt an extremely vast force bombarding the green lightning all. Then, his right hand became extremely numb. He couldn't help but retreat continuously. Only then did he see the true face of the cultivator who had sneaked an attack on him. The person who had appeared in front of him was a man who was shrouded in demonic fog. Ling Binbing took a closer look and realized that the man's face was 90% similar to Zhuowen's. Rumor has it that Zhuowen has a doppelganger. Could this guy be that guy's doppelganger? That's impossible. This guy's doppelganger is actually the real God Lei Hua? As Ling Binbing retreated, he waved the green lightning all in his hand. The surrounding green lightning stars that were densely packed shot towards the black-clothed Jun. The black-clothed Zhuowen held the Supreme Fire Sword in his right hand and the Supreme Thunder Sword in his left. With a twist of his waist, he shot forward like a whirlwind. The Lei Hua swords in his hands spun rapidly as his body spun. The light of thunder and fire exploded with a frightening brilliance as he spun. All the green lightning stars that shot towards him were actually blown to smithereens. Damn it. This guy has hidden himself really well. Ling Binbing's expression changed slightly. With a roar, he raised his aura to the peak. Then, the green lightning all blasted out without holding back. Bolts of green lightning appeared around Ling Binbing like pillars, making him seem like the reincarnation of the Thunder God. In an instant, Ling Binbing and the black-clothed Zhuowen engaged in a great battle. Under the encirclement of countless green lightning stars, it was as if they had entered a no-man's land. They constantly collided, bombarded, and flew. The battle between the two was basically evenly matched. Countless cracks appeared on the entire planet where the gloomy illusion sect was located. It trembled terrifyingly, as if the entire planet would collapse at any moment. Many of the spectating cultivators that had gathered on the planet fled the planet. There were even some unlucky cultivators who were directly blown to smithereens by the shockwaves of the battle because they were too close. Zhuowen's original body took a step forward. Over 9,000 ancient swords revolved around him like an upside-down waterfall, forming a storm of sword light. Then he joined the battle as well. The ancient swords in the storm of sword light were all forged by the ancient sword Saint King. They had followed the ancient sword Saint King for countless years in the past. It was easy to imagine how powerful they were. Chapter 2157. Blood Thunder Prison. This kid actually has such a powerful clone. If I'm not wrong, that clone uses the two extreme energies of extreme lightning and extreme fire. Is that a true god of lightning and fire? Chen Changxing, who had been watching the battle, couldn't help but stand up. His gaze was solemn as he looked at the distant battle. It wasn't just Chen Changxing, Yang Zhonghui and Fu Yuz were similarly shocked. Among them, Yang Zhonghui muttered in a low voice, "No wonder Zhuowen was so confident in challenging Ling Binbing to a duel. It turns out that he has a clone of the true god of thunder and fire. If that's the case, it will be somewhat difficult for Ling Binbing to defeat him." Fu Yuz sneered, "It's not just difficult. The chances of him losing are probably even higher. After all, even his original body has joined in. If they work together, Ling Binbing is already one of the weakest ancestors of the 10 great sections. It'll be very difficult for him to win this time." Chen Changxing suddenly transmitted his voice, "Looks like we can't just sit by and watch. According to our agreement with Sect Master Ling, this kid Zhuowen must die. Although this Zhuowen knows how to conduct himself and is very tactful, we've already made an agreement with Sect Master Ling and established a contract. This kid can't be left alive." We were careless. Let's wait first. It's not appropriate for us to make a move now. That Ling Binbing still has a trump card that he hasn't used. If he uses that trump card and still fails to kill this Juan, we'll make a move, Fu Yuz replied. I agree with Brother Fu. Although the four of us have an agreement, this Ling Binbing can't just sit there and do nothing. Let the three of us go together. After Ling Binbing uses his trump card, we'll see how things go, Yang Zhonghui said. Seeing that Fu Yuz and Yang Zhonghui were not in a hurry to make a move, Chen Changxing could only give up. He said indifferently, then let's just wait and see. Bang bang bang. As the battle between Zhuo Wen and Ling Binbing grew more and more intense, the surrounding space within a radius of 5 million kilometers collapsed. The planet that the Dark Mirage sect was on had long been reduced to dust by the shockwaves from their battle, and the spectating cultivators had to retreat again and again. Suddenly, everyone discovered a terrifying scarlet light erupting from the battlefield. This light was like blood. It was incomparably bright, and the surrounding starry sky was dyed blood red by this light. Within this scarlet light, an extremely terrifying aura spread out. All the cultivators who felt this aura felt their hearts tighten, as if their hearts were being ruthlessly pulled. Ling Binbing has used his trump card. Zhuan is most likely going to be defeated, Chen Changxing said with a burning gaze. Yang Zhonghui nodded and said that Zhuan was able to force Ling Binbing to use his trump card. He's really not simple. Although he lost this time, it's still an honorable defeat, but Fu Yuz laughed coldly and continued, however, we definitely have to kill this kid completely. This kid's Void Sky 5 steps, and in addition to real God Lei Hua's split body, he already has the ability to threaten the 10 great sections. If this kid is given enough time, I'm afraid we might not be able to suppress him. Before this kid grows up, we have to kill him. The scarlet light grew brighter and brighter. Then, two figures flew out from the center of the scarlet light in quite a sorry state. They barely managed to stabilize themselves 1,000,000 miles away. These two figures were Zhuowen's original body and his split body, who were dressed in white. Zhuowen's eyes squinted and he looked extremely solemn. At first, Ling Binbing was originally suppressed by him. However, for some unknown reason, the old man took out a palm-sized scarlet crystal from his spiritual ring. Ling Binbing crushed the scarlet crystal and an intense scarlet light burst out from it. It was also filled with an extremely pungent smell of blood. The scarlet light was filled with extremely vast energy. Zhuan was careless and he was hit by the power of the scarlet light. He couldn't help but fly out with a pale face. The scarlet light that spread out was extremely fast. In an instant, it enveloped the surrounding starry sky of tens of millions of miles. Then, the scarlet light transformed into strange red lines that intertwined with the starry sky of tens of millions of miles, forming an extremely huge scarlet prison. Because the red lines were too dense and the strange red lines had the ability to block out divine sense, the cultivators outside had no idea what was happening inside the prison. Because Zhuan was the closest to Ling Binbing and the scarlet light was too fast, Zhuan was unquestionably trapped in the red prison. Ling Binbing's scarlet lightning prison is extraordinary. If Ling Binbing used this move on me, I would probably have to take out a sub-heaven-shattering divine artifact to deal with it. Then Zhuowen's chances of survival aren't high, Chen Changsheng commented indifferently. At this moment, countless bolts of blood lightning gathered in the core area of the scarlet lightning prison. In the core area, a figure slowly walked over. This person was surrounded by dense bolts of blood lightning. At first glance, he looked like he was wearing a sinister blood-red armor. Little bastard, you forced me to use the bloody thunder hell. Well done. Don't worry, as a reward, I won't kill you right away. I'll capture you and use all the torture methods in the world on you. This person was Ling Binbing. In this scarlet lightning prison, Ling Binbing's power was far greater than it had been before. In the past, Ling Binbing was only slightly stronger than a king spirit. Now, however, he was much stronger than a king spirit. He was very close to Old Man Ruthless. Ling Binbing, however, did not feel happy at all. The Bloody Thunder Prison was his trump card, and he only had one piece of the scarlet crystal that created the Bloody Thunder Prison. Furthermore, It took him 100,000 years and many precious medicines and resources to get that one piece. Originally, Ling Binbing's Blood Thunder Prison was enough to put him on the same level as Chen Changxing and the other sect masters who had secondary heaven-shattering divine artifacts. However, now that he had used the Blood Thunder Prison ahead of time, he was probably going to be inferior. What was more hateful was that if Ling Binbing wanted to recreate the red crystal, he would have to spend another 100,000 years, and there was no guarantee that he would succeed. Therefore, Ling Binbing hated Zhuowen to the core. Sizzle! Ling Binbing waved his right hand, and the area where Zhuowen was at was immediately filled with countless blood lightning bolts that attacked him. Zhuowen immediately tried to dodge and block, but it was no use. The bolts of blood lightning were too dense. In particular, his main body was much weaker than his clone, and there were many hideous wounds on his body from the blood lightning. Zhuowen had no choice but to put the original body into Devour's space. Then, he let the black-clothed Zhuowen resist the bolts of blood lightning alone. Your clone is not bad. It is Thunder Fire True God. But even Thunder Fire True God will have to die in my Scarlet Lightning prison. Ling Binbing laughed cruelly. He performed a spell with his right hand. Suddenly, the bolts of blood lightning became denser and denser. It looked like they were going to blow Zhuowen into pieces. Zhuowen took a deep breath and said coldly, "You forced me to do this. I didn't want to reveal my original body, but now I have to." Ling Binbing was stunned. Apparently, he did not understand what Zhuowen meant. But soon he understood. The demonic mist around Zhuowen's clone began to roll violently. Chapter 2158. One human and one beast. The demonic fog churned at an extremely fast speed. Soon after, an extremely huge and frightening beast charged out from the churning demonic fog. This giant beast was so huge that when it stood up, it actually reached the top of the Blood Thunder Prison, causing the Blood Thunder Prison to tremble violently. Ling Binbing was frightened, looking at the giant beast in front of him. He couldn't help but exclaim, "Is that Devour? This guy's real body is Devour?" As he spoke, Ling Binbing slowly retreated, his face gloomy to the extreme. When Zhuowen's clone was Thunder Fire True God, Shi Yan thought that it would be tough to deal with him. However, he had never thought that it wasn't the real power of this man's clone. Without a doubt, Devour's real body was much stronger than before. Moreover, Devour had the two extreme powers, the extreme fire and extreme lightning, which made him even tougher to deal with. Boom. Unfortunately, Devour didn't give Ling Binbing more time to think. It roared and stormed over. Its massive claws seemed to be able to tear apart everything in this world. The dense blood lightning in the Blood Thunder Prison hit Devour, but it didn't affect him at all. It was like scratching an itch. Ling Binbing raised the blue lightning all in his hand. However, it wasn't releasing the blue lightning anymore. It was the blood lightning, which was much stronger than the blue lightning all. Boom. The sharp claws heavily smashed onto the awl, producing a terrifying muffled sound that resembled the roar of thunder. Ling Binbing let out a muffled groan. He only felt that the awl that he was holding with both hands was being pressed down by an incomparably huge mountain. The awl almost slipped out of his hands, and Ling Binbing himself retreated continuously. "Damn it! Back off!" Ling Binbing roared angrily and clenched the awl in his hand tightly. A dazzling scarlet light burst out from the awl, and the blood thunder rushed out like a swarm of locusts. His originally retreating figure finally stopped. Rumble! Instantly, the terrifying energy burst out from Ling Binbing's body, blowing away Devour's sharp claws. Devour couldn't help but take several steps backward. Ling Binbing's Blood Thunder Prison is really amazing. He can use the power of the entire Blood Thunder territory to resist Devour. However, this Blood Thunder Prison is like a secret technique, so it should have a time limit. Zhuowen's real body in Devour's body was calmly analyzing the situation. Although he was surprised by Ling Binbing's power, he didn't mind it. With Devour's current competence, although he couldn't subdue Ling Binbing, he could consume Ling Binbing's energy continuously. Once the bloody thunder hell reached its limit, Ling Binbing would eventually become a fish on his chopping board, at his mercy. Boom, boom. Thinking of this, Devour's attacks became fiercer. Like a storm, his attacks fell on Ling Binbing. At the same time, Ling Binbing didn't show any weakness. With the mighty power of the Blood Thunder Prison, he was evenly matched with Devour. However, if one took a closer look, they could see that Ling Binbing was still in a disadvantageous position. After all, as time passed, the power of the Blood Thunder Prison was weakening. On the other hand, Devour was getting fiercer. Outside the Blood Thunder Prison, countless cultivators were watching the massive blood-red barrier in silence. Many of them tried to send out their divine senses to check the situation inside the Blood Thunder Prison. Although they couldn't see what was inside the Blood Thunder Prison, they could hear the terrifying roars of beasts coming from the Blood Thunder Prison. They could also hear the fierce collisions and the figures fighting inside. Everyone knew that the battle between Zhuowen and Ling Binbing had reached its climax. It was a battle at the 8 steps void sky level, which was a rare sight. Many cultivators were itching to see it. Chen Changxing, Yang Zhonghui, and Fu Yuz frowned. Chen Changxing said in a deep voice, "It's been more than 1 hour. Why hasn't the battle ended yet?" As far as Chen Changxing and the others were concerned, Ling Binbing's strength had greatly increased after displaying the Blood Lightning Prison. He should be able to easily suppress and defeat Zhuowen. However, more than 1 hour had passed, and the battle inside the Blood Thunder Prison still hadn't stopped. Instead, it was getting more and more intense. This made the three of them surprised by Zhuowen's strength. It seems that we have underestimated Zhuowen. Even Ling Binbing, who displayed the Blood Thunder Prison, couldn't take him down. "This is really beyond my expectations," Fu Yuz said with a gloomy expression. Chen Changxing nodded. The coldness in his eyes became even more intense. He said, "This kid can't be left alive. If Ling Binbing really can't kill him this time, the three of us will take action and kill him." Suddenly, the surface of the Blood Thunder Prison, which spanned tens of millions of miles across the starry sky, suddenly became densely packed with cracks. Moreover, the cracks became denser and more terrifying. A force that could collapse the starry sky soared into the sky from the Blood Thunder Prison. Some unlucky cultivators who were close didn't expect the Blood Thunder Prison to collapse at all. The moment they approached the Blood Thunder Prison, they were swept in by the terrifying collapsing force. Not even their bones were left behind. The Blood Thunder Prison has shattered. Is the battle over? The other onlookers who originally intended to approach the Bloody Thunder Prison, after seeing the cultivators who were swept away by the collapsing power, they all moved away in embarrassment, but their eyes were fixed on the Bloody Thunder Prison that was beginning to shatter. Chen Changxing and the other two also stared at the Blood Thunder Prison with solemn expressions. They had a bad feeling in their hearts. Rumble! The Blood Thunder Prison had completely collapsed. Then, everyone discovered that within the Blood Thunder Prison, a huge beast that was tens of millions of miles long was lying in the center of the countless fragments of the Blood Thunder Prison. Bang! At the same time, an extremely wretched figure was directly blasted out of the ground. Everyone looked over and found that the embarrassed figure wasn't someone else. It was Ling Binbing, who had just performed the terrifying Blood Thunder Prison. At this moment, Ling Binbing was covered in blood. His aura was weak, and he was lying in the void. His limbs drooped powerlessly, and he could only move slowly. His limbs were crippled. Everyone turned their heads to look and discovered that the gigantic beast was also wounded in many places. 60% of its scales had been ripped open, revealing its incomparably blood-red flesh. However, unlike Ling Binbing, who was like a dead dog, this giant beast was in a much better state. Moreover, people found that the wounds on its body had begun to heal slowly. Its self-healing ability was extremely powerful. Isn't that Zhuowen? Could it be that this terrifying giant beast is Zhuowen's mount? Someone with sharp eyes saw a young man in snow-white clothes standing on Devour's giant head. He couldn't help but exclaim. The others followed his exclamation and couldn't help but look at Devour. Indeed, they saw the young man in white standing there. Chapter 2159. Heavy Losses Swoosh. A figure flashed to Ling Binbing's side and extended his right hand towards Ling Binbing's neck. Shortly after, that person frowned and looked coldly at Ling Binbing as he said, How dare you destroy Sect Master Ling's illusory heavenly bridge? This person was none other than the Universal Sect's ancestor, Qin Chongxing. Zhuan stood on Devour's head and looked down at Qin Chongxing. He could see the killing intent in Qin Chongxing's eyes. After swallowing the heavenly domain's starry sky essence, Yun took out half a barrel and poured it into Devour's mouth. Devour, who had been severely injured, instantly recovered to his peak condition after swallowing half a barrel of heavenly domain's starry sky essence. Devour's body was too big. 1 or 2 drops of heavenly domain's starry sky essence were useless to Devour. Seeing Zhuan take out half a barrel of heavenly domain's starry sky essence for Devour, the crowd went into an uproar. Many cultivators looked at Devour with burning eyes and their breathing quickened. One had to admit that Zhuan was really generous. He took out half a barrel of heavenly domain's starry sky essence for Devour and didn't even frown. What did this mean? It meant that Zhuan had a lot of heavenly domain's starry sky essence. Although many cultivators coveted Zhua Wen's heavenly domain's starry sky essence, after seeing Ling Binbing's miserable state, many cultivators shuddered and immediately calmed down. Senior Qin, when I fought with Ling Binbing, we didn't say that we couldn't destroy each other's illusory heavenly bridge, did we? Do you have a problem with that? Zhuowen said indifferently. However, he was secretly alarmed. This Qin Chongxing was a little strange. Attack! Qin Chongxing suddenly gave a loud shout. He lifted up the half-dead Ling Binbing with one hand and fiercely threw him towards Zhuowen, while his right leg kicked off and he shot towards Zhuowen like a gust of wind. At the same time, Yang Zhonghui and Fu Yuz followed closely behind, forming a pincer formation as they quickly approached Zhuowen. Qin Chongxing and the other 2 were too fast. Before the surrounding crowd could even react, they discovered that Zhuowen had already been surrounded by Qin Chongxing and the other 2. At the same time, Qin Chongxing and the others all pulled out their secondary heaven-crushing divine artifacts and blasted them toward Zhuowen in unison. They wanted to take Zhuowen's life from the get-go. The king's spirits, who had wanted to get closer to Zhuowen, were shocked. They sped up, and Old Man Emotionless was the first to move. However, they were quite a distance away from Zhuowen. Moreover, Qin Chongxing and the other 2 had clearly planned this beforehand. Their cooperation was extremely tacit. Their first move to kill was beyond their expectations. 3 secondary heaven-crushing divine artifacts. Zhuowen, who was standing on Devour's head, couldn't help but narrow his eyes when he saw Qin Chongxing and the other 2's actions. Although he could faintly sense that Ling Binbing was rather fearful and respectful of Qin Chongxing's trio, he didn't pay much attention to it at first, but now he finally realized that all 3 of them actually possessed secondary heaven-shattering divine artifacts. One had to know that the difference between a secondary heaven-crushing divine artifact and a void sky divine artifact was huge. If a cultivator with a secondary heaven-crushing divine artifact had an 8th-step void sky divine artifact, they could absolutely crush their opponent. Yao Xiong was only at the 6th-step void sky divine artifact, while King Spirit was at the peak of the 7th-step void sky divine artifact. However, because Yao Xiong had the supreme shining sun blade, King Spirit was extremely afraid of him. In the end, King Spirit had to pay a heavy price to defeat Yao Xiong. Of course, this was also because King Spirit had the heavenly star essence. Moreover, the supreme shining sun blade wasn't a true secondary heaven-crushing divine artifact. It was a divine artifact between a void sky divine artifact and a secondary heaven-crushing divine artifact. From this, one could see just how powerful a secondary heaven-crushing divine artifact was. Now that Qin Chongxing and the other 2 had used their secondary heaven-crushing divine artifacts, it was clear that they wanted to kill Zhuowen. Zhuowen immediately entered Devour's inner world. At the same time, he released the ice lotuses. The ice lotuses surrounded Devour's body, forming a tough ice armor. At the same time, the ice lotuses released a torrential cold qi, turning Devour's surroundings into a world of ice and snow. The ice lotuses were originally obtained by Yu Wuxi through a fortuitous encounter. In fact, their defensive power had already reached the level of a secondary heaven-crushing divine artifact. Besides, Devour had also released his innate supernatural abilities, the Purgatory and the Heavenly Thunder Eye. The purgatory was used to weaken Qin Changsheng's team, while the heavenly thunder eye released scorching black lightning that surrounded Zhuowen, creating a lightning defense. Not only that, but Zhuowen also operated the secret technique, Rain of Thousand Swords, and summoned the King's Sword. More than 9,000 ancient swords were summoned by the King's Sword. The dense sword lights turned into a ring-shaped storm of sword lights that revolved around Zhuowen. By the time Zhuowen completed the last layer of defense, Qin Changsheng and the other two had already made their move. The secondary heaven-crushing divine artifact in Qin Changsheng's hand was a long sword engraved with many ancient patterns. When he swung the sword, the patterns on the sword actually materialized, transforming into a powerful offensive. Yang Zhonghui's secondary heaven-crushing divine artifact was an embroidery needle. This embroidery needle was like fire. When it was swung out, it left a fiery red trail in the air, setting off terrifying flames. Fu Yu's secondary heaven-crushing divine artifact was a meteor hammer. This meteor hammer was surrounded by starlight. When it was swung out, it set off a dense meteor shower. This meteor shower wasn't illusory, but real. Its power was much stronger than the meteor shower formed in the starry sky. The three attacks bombarded Zhuowen's body. The surrounding starry sky collapsed layer by layer, revealing a vast expanse of darkness and nothingness. Kacha! In an instant, the defense formed by the 9,000 ancient swords around Zhuowen was the first to be hit. Then, Zhuowen's eyes turned gloomy as he saw the 9,000 ancient swords being blown away rapidly. In just 2 breaths of time, 4 to 5,000 ancient swords had been destroyed. In other words, these 4 to 5,000 ancient swords were completely annihilated into nothingness. They were completely useless. Even if Zhuowen wanted to repair them, it would be a little difficult. In 5 breaths of time, the 9,000 ancient swords were completely destroyed, shattering into countless fragments. Then, the domains released by Devour's 2 innate abilities were also broken. They couldn't hold on for long. In the end, 3 attacks landed heavily on Devour's body. Kacha! Then, countless cracks appeared on the ice lotus armor on Devour's surface, as if it would shatter at any moment. Zhuowen felt his internal organs tumbling. Even with Devour's tough body, he still couldn't bear the bombardment of 3 secondary heaven-crushing divine artifacts. Go! Zhuowen roared, ordering Devour to flee as fast as he could. Blood splattered all over the starry sky. On Devour's massive body, several tens of thousands of li-long wounds had appeared. Blood spurted out like a rain of blood. He's not dead. Keep chasing. Qin Changsheng was surprised. The 3 of them had attacked at the same time, using their secondary heaven-crushing divine artifacts. Even a Void Sky 8 Steps expert would have to bear a grudge. However, Devour's clone had withstood it. Although he was severely injured, he wasn't dead. Old Wu Qing, hurry up! Sensing the pursuit of Qin Changsheng's group, Zhuowen shouted at Old Man Wu Qing. Chapter 2160. Teleportation Bang! 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 Qin Changsheng's group of 3 crashed heavily into the ancient formation. Soon after, the 3 of them were forced back by the powerful energy of the formation. Their eyes were filled with shock. A peak level 8 formation? And it even has a trace of the charm of a level 9 formation. Who set it up? Fu Yu said in surprise. Let's not worry about that for now. Let's work together to break this formation. Qin Changsheng was flustered and exasperated. They were almost able to completely annihilate that Zhuowen, but that brat still managed to escape. He was extremely unwilling to accept this. Fu Yu's and Yang Zhonghui naturally had no objections. Soon after, the 3 of them used the secondary heaven-shattering divine artifacts in their hands, no longer holding back. Instead, they fiercely bombarded the ancient formation before them. Boom! 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 The might of the 3 secondary heaven-shattering divine artifacts was indeed terrifying. Under the bombardment of the secondary heaven-shattering divine artifacts, the entire formation was on the verge of collapse, as if it would shatter at any moment. Outside the ancient formation, Zhuowen's original body flew out from the world within his body. He gloomily looked at the constantly shaking ancient formation and said in a low voice, Old man Wu Qing, can you handle these three? Handle your sister. Can't you see that all three of them have secondary heaven-shattering divine artifacts in their hands? Especially that Qin Changxing. Although that old man's cultivation is slightly weaker than mine, I can feel that his strength is definitely not ordinary. Coupled with the secondary heaven-shattering divine artifacts from last time, I may not necessarily be Qin Changxing's match. Coupled with that Yang Zhonghui and Fu Yu's, if I were to face the three of them, wouldn't I end up dying a horrible death? Brat, do you want me to die? Old man Wu Qing cursed loudly, causing Zhuan to feel extremely awkward. As old man Wu Qing had previously helped him eliminate Yu Wuxi, Zhuan subconsciously thought that this old man's strength was unfathomable and that he should be able to handle Qin Changxing's group. But now, it seemed that he had been overthinking things. Looks like you admit that your strength is inferior to Qin Changxing's group? Zhuan said in surprise. Bullshit. Bullshit. This old man is weaker than the three of them? If the three of them didn't have secondary heaven-breaking divine artifacts, I wouldn't have a problem fighting them alone. However, all three of them have secondary heaven-breaking divine artifacts, old man Wu Qing cursed. Don't tell me you don't have a heaven-crushing divine tool? Zhuan looked at old man Wu Qing in surprise. Old man Wu Qing harumphed. I do, but do you think I'm stupid when faced with three secondary heaven-crushing divine tools? Why should I risk my life for you? Zhuan frowned. Thinking about it, he felt that what old emotionless said made sense. There was no way the old man would risk his life for him. Rumble. Suddenly, the ancient array behind him shook even more violently. Countless cracks appeared on its surface, causing Zhuan to tremble in fear. Old man, the three of them are about to break out of the array. Hurry up and activate the teleportation array. Where did you set it up? Zhuan's face sank slightly. Old man Wu Qing's eyes flickered. He knew that the situation was urgent, so he did not argue with Zhuan. He said indifferently, "Come with me. Your battle with Ling Binbing was too intense. You almost destroyed the teleportation array. Fortunately, I was quick-witted and changed the location of the teleportation array ahead of time." Zhuan followed behind old man Wu Qing with the Emperor Spirit. Soon, they landed near the old site of the Gloomy Illusion Sect. The Gloomy Illusion Sect had long been reduced to rubble, forming a dangerous area like an asteroid belt. The majestic Gloomy Illusion Sect of the past had long since ceased to exist. Passing through the rubble, old man Wu Qing quickly stopped at the center of the rubble. He formed a seal with his hands, and immediately, a white light appeared in the empty central area. The white light became more and more intense, extending for several kilometers before interweaving into an enormous array. The instant the formation appeared, the ancient formation trapping Qin Changxing in the distance finally collapsed completely. Afterwards, Qin Changxing and the other two rushed out. Zhun, where do you think you're going? You're definitely going to die today. Qin Changxing immediately spotted Zhuan in the center of the rubble. When he saw the array in the center, his gaze changed slightly. He could tell that the array was a teleportation array. Swish, 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 swish. Yang Zhonghui and Fu Yu's obviously guessed Zhuan's intentions as well. They shot out, directly chasing after Zhuan. They wanted to kill Zhuan before Zhuan entered the teleportation array or destroy it. Let's go! Zhuan's eyes narrowed. He hurriedly led everyone into the teleportation array, while old man Wu Qing remained in the array. He formed a profound finger technique with his right hand and jabbed at the center of the array. An extremely blazing light erupted from the teleportation array. Immediately after, a suction force pulled Zhuan and the others towards it. Before Qin Changxing could arrive, Zhuan and the others finally disappeared into the teleportation array. Bastard! This is a temporary teleportation array. This guy set it up here a long time ago. Cunning brat, he must have been plotting against us. Qin Changxing's gaze was gloomy. Fu Yu's hands jabbed at the center of the rubble as he silently deduced. Suddenly, his expression changed drastically. Brother Fu, what's wrong? Qin Changxing saw the change in Fu Yu's expression and could not help but ask in surprise. Fu Yu's gaze was strange. He hesitated for a moment before saying, I just deduced the location of the array. In the end, I discovered. Chen Changsheng felt that something was wrong. He hurriedly asked, "Discovered what?" This teleportation array is a simulation of the ancient teleportation array. The destination is Heaven and Earth sect. Fu Yu sighed. Heaven and Earth sect? Chen Changsheng's expression changed. Wasn't that his sect? Chen Changsheng was no fool. When he knew that Zhuowen was teleporting to Heaven and Earth sect, he knew what Zhuowen wanted to do. Although he had already ordered the sect to activate the defensive array before leaving Heaven and Earth sect, he knew that without the support of an ancestor like him, the array would not be able to unleash its full power. It would not be able to block the attacks of an 8th stage Void Sky cultivator. I need to return to Heavenly Devil Island. I need to use the ancient teleportation array. Chen Changsheng did not even hesitate and left the place. Yang Zhonghui and Fu Yuz hurriedly returned to Heavenly Devil Island after making arrangements for their high-ranking disciples. Although Zhuowen was heading to the Shiyu Qiankuan sect this time, given Zhuowen's hatred for them, it was likely that he would use the ancient transmission array of the Qiankuan sect to cause trouble in their sect. This was not something they wanted to see. The defensive array of Heavenly Devil Island was still activated. When the disciples of Heavenly Devil Island saw Chen Changsheng return, their eyes were filled with vigilance. Magatama narrowed his eyes and said coldly, "The three of you, why did you come to my Heavenly Devil Island again? Do you think that my Heavenly Devil Island is easy to bully?" Chen Changsheng clasped his hands and said, "Brother Mo, it's a misunderstanding. This time, we plan to borrow the ancient teleportation array of your Heavenly Devil Island. In Dongyu, only your Heavenly Devil Island has an ancient teleportation array." Chapter 2161. Heaven and Earth sect. Magatama's eyes flickered as he cupped his hands and smiled. "I'm really sorry. Our Heavenly Demon Island's ancient teleportation array has some problems, so I'm afraid I can't help you." Chen Changsheng's face immediately darkened. "Brother, what do you mean? You don't want us to use the ancient teleportation array and want to help that little bastard Zhuowen?" From Chen Changsheng's point of view, Magatama was just making excuses. Even Yang Zhonghui and Fu Yu's gazes weren't friendly. Magatama, however, wasn't afraid. He spread his hands and said, "If you two don't believe me, you can go take a look at Heavenly Demon Island's teleportation array. I'm not lying." As he spoke, Magatama opened the defensive array. Chen Changsheng and the other two looked at each other. They obviously didn't expect Magatama to open the array so easily. The three of them cupped their hands towards Magatama and headed towards Heavenly Demon Island's teleportation array. When they arrived at the ancient teleportation array, the faces of Chen Changsheng and the other two darkened. What Mo Tian said earlier wasn't wrong. There was indeed a problem with the ancient teleportation array. At the corner of the teleportation array, there was a massive gap, causing the ancient teleportation array to be unable to be used normally. "Brother Mo, your teleportation array is an important area of Heavenly Demon Island. How could there be such a gap? Could it be that you intentionally damaged it?" Chen Changsheng said coldly. Mo Tian let out a snort and said, "Brother Chen, don't make false accusations. I believe you are clearer than me about the preciousness of the ancient teleportation array. I wouldn't go so far as to intentionally damage it." Chen Changsheng and the other two frowned. Although they were flustered and exasperated, they didn't dare to lose their temper at Magatama. After all, Magatama wasn't weak and they were currently in Heavenly Demon Island's headquarters. The three of them might be able to suppress Mo Tian if they worked together, but they didn't wish to offend Mo Tian. After all, the Heaven Devil Island was one of the top 10 sects, and it was definitely one of the top 2 sections. If they offended Mo Tian, the final outcome would be a lose-lose situation for both sides. Yang Zhonghui and Fu Yuz both looked at Chen Changsheng, waiting for him to make the decision. "Go!" Chen Changsheng snorted coldly and left the Heavenly Demon Island. Ever since he found out that Zhuowen had been teleported to Heaven and Earth sect, Chen Changsheng lost his cool. Since he couldn't use the ancient transfer array in Heaven Devil Island, he could only rush back to Heaven and Earth sect as soon as possible. "Brother Chen, I won't go back to Shiyu with you." Yang Zhonghui cupped her hands at Chen Changsheng, then led the upper echelons of the Devil Pearl sect and parted ways with Qin Changxing. Qin Changxing didn't stop him. Devil Pearl sect was in Southern Universe. Now that Zhuan was going to Heaven and Earth sect first, if he really caused a ruckus in Heaven and Earth sect, then his next target would be Void Rush Summit and Devil Pearl sect. Moreover, Devil Pearl sect wasn't in Western Universe, so Yang Zhonghui had no reason to follow Qin Changxing. I hope the sect's defensive array can hold on. Qin Changxing steered the flying ship, his heart filled with worry. Outside the Heaven and Earth sect, a white light flashed and a group of people appeared. The Heaven and Earth sect isn't far away. Given Qin Changxing's caution, he should have activated the defensive array before leaving. Zhuan, dressed in white, stood in front of the group, his eyes filled with sharp light. This time, he had suffered great losses. His primitive demonic golden sword had been damaged long ago, and even the ancient sword Sage King's 9,000 ancient swords had been destroyed. The glorious amethyst galaxy divine sword had been shattered, and even the ice lotus was covered in fine cracks. According to Zhuo Wen's estimation, it would be very difficult to repair the ice lotus. Moreover, due to the dense cracks, its cultivation effects were much weaker than before. This made Zhuowen even more annoyed and disgusted with Qin Changxing's group. How do you plan to get in? The Heaven and Earth sect is much stronger than High Heaven sect and Dark Illusion sect. If we force our way in, not only will we alert them, we may not succeed, Old Man Wu Qing said solemnly. We'll find a way to sneak in. Once we do, we'll kill them all, Zhuowen said coldly. Our group is too obvious now. You should all enter the spirit ring first. After I sneak into the Heaven and Earth sect, I'll let you out. Zhuowen said. Di Ling and the others had no objections, but Old Man Wu Qing was adamant. Zhuowen didn't insist. After putting away Di Ling and the others, he had Old Man Wu Qing follow behind him. The two of them spent 6 hours and finally got close to the Heaven and Earth sect. The Heaven and Earth sect was a sect built on 3 huge stars. Its area and scale were far greater than High Heaven sect and Dark Illusion sect. At this moment, the area around the Heaven and Earth sect was surrounded by a light barrier and ripples. A powerful spirit array had been set up, which was the Heaven and Earth sect's defensive array. Look, the Heaven and Earth sect is heavily guarded. If you want to enter, it'll be too difficult. Old Man Wu Qing crossed his arms and said calmly. That's not necessarily true. However, Zhuowen smiled confidently. Soon after, he retrieved the Thunder Fire Sword from his spirit ring. After instructing it, Blackie, who was within the Thunder Fire Sword, chuckled mischievously. Then, it turned into a ray of sword light and disappeared from its original spot. What were you talking about with the sword spirit just now? Old Man Wu Qing's eyes were filled with surprise. Just now, Huan and Xiao He were communicating with each other, so he didn't hear the details. You'll know when you see, Zhuan smiled mysteriously. The Heaven and Earth sect's disciples had a strict hierarchy. They were divided into core disciples, inner disciples, outer disciples, and odd job disciples. Among the 4 classes, the odd job disciples had the lowest status. They were also the group that the Heaven and Earth sect didn't value the most. They did the most tiring work but could only cultivate the simplest cultivation techniques. They also had to endure the beatings and scoldings of the other senior disciples. Huang Xinli was a Heaven and Earth sect odd job disciple. He hadn't been in the Heaven and Earth sect for long and was angry at the low status of the odd job disciples. However, he couldn't do anything about it and could only endure it silently. He hoped that when he became stronger in the future, he could change everything. Of course, Huang Xinli's wish was beautiful. However, reality was cruel. He was a powerless rookie now. There's a sword here? The color of the sword looks good. Passing by a broken star, Huang Xinli's consciousness scanned the area as usual to avoid the meteorites that were flying towards him. However, he soon discovered that not far ahead, there was a divine sword with lightning and fire. It was sandwiched between 2 pieces of rocks and looked extremely inconspicuous. If it wasn't for the fact that Huang Xinli had to pass by the rocks, he wouldn't have discovered the divine sword. After pondering for a moment, Huang Xinli pulled out the divine sword and held it in his hand. Then, he slashed out with his right hand. Instantly, a terrifying sword chi soared into the sky. Then, all the rocks within a few thousand miles around him were reduced to dust. This divine sword is so powerful. Huang Xinli was stunned. His eyes were filled with shock. This was definitely the most powerful divine weapon he had ever seen. This is definitely a void sky divine weapon. I have to hide it well. Otherwise, I'm afraid I'll be killed. Chapter 2162. Lu Xian. Huang Xinli's heart was filled with apprehension. He was just a servant disciple of the Qiankuan sect. Without enough talent and resources, he could only be a servant disciple his entire life. But now that he had obtained the divine sword, he knew that his fate was about to change. He might even become a peerless expert in the future. Thinking about this, Huang Xinli's body trembled with excitement. Lu Xian despises me for being a servant disciple. A few days ago, she abandoned me and threw herself into Mu Gaofei's arms. Isn't it because Mu Gaofei is an outer sect disciple and his status is higher than mine? Huang Xinli's face suddenly turned ferocious. Lu Xian was his lover. Back then, the two of them entered the Qiankuan sect as servant disciples. Moreover, Lu Xian's beauty was extraordinary. Because Huang Xinli had such a lover, he was often bullied by the other servant disciples. However, Huang Xinli did not mind. As long as Lu Xian was by his side, he was willing to suffer any hardship. But a few days ago, LV Xian threw herself into the arms of an outer court disciple, Mu Gaofei, and heartlessly abandoned him. Huang Xinli was completely dispirited and urgently wanted to become stronger, wanting to prove himself to LV Xian. Now that Huang Xinli had obtained the divine sword, he regained his confidence. This was because when he held the divine sword, a sentence appeared in his mind. I can make you stronger. Although the words were simple, Huang Xinli did not doubt it. Especially after he felt the power of the divine sword, he did not doubt the voice that appeared in his mind. Outside the Qiankuan sect's array, Huang Xinli rushed to the gate and his eyes were filled with apprehension. Ever since the Qiankuan sect's array was activated, the Qiankuan sect became very strict with the disciples entering and exiting. Take out your identity token. At the gate, the two guards looked at Huang Xinli indifferently. They did not seem to care. Huang Xinli was wearing the clothes of a servant disciple. There were too many disciples with such low status in the Qiankuan sect. Hence, they did not pay much attention to him. After Huang Xinli took out his identity token, the two guards looked at it and opened a gap in the array. They said coldly, "Get in here." Huang Xinli nodded submissively and hurriedly entered the gate. Soon after, the defensive formation closed again. Huang Xinli rushed straight to his residence, closed the low door, and impatiently took out the divine sword from his spirit ring. However, the moment he took out the divine sword, he discovered that a figure had appeared in his room. It was a young man in snow-white robes. For you. Huang Xinli immediately clenched the divine sword in his hand and looked nervously at the white-clothed youth in front of him. He actually didn't sense how this person had appeared in his room. However, when Huang Xinli thought of the divine sword in his hand, he calmed down a lot. He coldly said, "If you know what's good for you, get out of my room immediately. Otherwise, don't blame me for being merciless." "You're welcome? Do you think you can do it with that divine sword in your hand?" The white-clothed youth said with a mocking smile. Huang Xinli's gaze darkened. He recalled the powerful might of the divine sword from before and calmed down a lot. He said, "Since you are courting death, then don't blame me." As he spoke, Huang Xinli wielded the sword in his right hand and slashed at the white-clothed youth. However, what surprised Huang Xinli was that the divine sword didn't display the powerful sword radiance. Instead, it left his hand and floated around the white-clothed youth. What is going on? Huang Xinli was so shocked that he sat on the ground. "Because the divine sword is mine," the white-clothed youth said calmly. Huang Xinli realized something and hurriedly knelt on the ground. He kowtowed to the white-clothed youth and said, "Senior, I have eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. I actually took your divine sword. Please spare my life." "You didn't do anything wrong. Moreover, you did well. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have been able to enter Qinkuan's sect. You can take this. The white-clothed youth smiled and took out a brocade box from his spirit ring. He passed it to Huang Xinli and said, "This is fire spirit juice. It can help you break through to real God. Take it." Huang Xinli trembled and took the brocade box. He stuttered and said, "Fire spirit juice? Is it really fire spirit juice? Senior, this is too precious. Take it. Moreover, I have a small favor that I need your help with." The white-clothed youth smiled faintly. Huang Xinli excitedly kept the brocade box and said, "Senior, please tell me. If I can do it, I will do it for you. It's simple. You just need to sleep for a while." After the white-clothed youth finished speaking, he waved his right hand and a blast of energy hit Huang Xinli's neck, knocking him out. After settling Huang Xinli down, Zhuan set up a shielding array around Huang Xinli and walked out of the room. The identity of this white-clothed young man was naturally obvious. He was Zhuan. After leaving the room, Zhuan's facial muscles started to move and he turned into Huang Xinli's appearance. "Chen Changxing, you betrayed me and even wanted to take my, Zhuan's, life. Very well, today I, Zhuan, shall wreak havoc in your heaven and earth sect." Zhuan laughed coldly in his heart and walked towards the core of the Qinkuan sect, the Qinkuan Tower. Although it was Zhuan's first time in the Qinkuan sect, he had checked Huang Xinli's memories and knew that the Qinkuan Tower was the core of the Qinkuan sect. It was said that 80% of the experts in the Qinkuan sect were in the Qinkuan Tower. It was said that the Qinkuan Tower was a huge cultivation pagoda. It could help cultivators cultivate faster. Any disciple in the Qinkuan sect could cultivate in the Qinkuan Tower, including the servant disciples. However, it required contribution points to cultivate in the Qinkuan Tower. The servant disciples had too little contribution points and very few disciples were willing to cultivate in the Qinkuan Tower. Most of them were outer disciples, inner disciples, and core disciples who cultivated in the Qinkuan Tower. Other than the disciples, the strongest elders in the Qinkuan sect would cultivate at the top of the Qinkuan Tower. It was said that only elders who had reached the 5th level and above could enter the top of the Qinkuan Tower. It was a place that many disciples desired to enter. Zhuan knew that since the Qinkuan Tower was the core of the Qinkuan sect, he only needed to kill all the experts in the Qinkuan Tower and the Qinkuan sect wouldn't be much of a threat to him. This time, he wanted to catch the Qinkuan sect off guard. Otherwise, if the Qinkuan sect experts teamed up, he would be hard to deal with. "Huang Xinli, what are you doing in the Qinkuan Tower?" All of a sudden, a sharp female voice came from behind him. Zhuan furrowed his brows and turned around to find a man and woman standing behind him. The man's nose was pointed towards the sky and he didn't even look at Huang Xinli. The aura he gave off was much stronger than Huang Xinli. He was already a true god. As for the woman, she was pretty and had a great figure. At this moment, she was leaning on the man's body gently. Chapter 2163. Universe Tower, what's the matter? Zhuan coldly asked. Zhuan knew from Huang Xinli's memories that she was his old love, Lu Xian. It was said that for resources, she threw herself into the embrace of Mu Gaofei. Zhuan didn't have a good impression of this kind of woman, but he didn't want to meddle in other people's business. Lu Xian saw the cold expression on Zhuan's face and couldn't help but be startled. Back then, Huang Xinli had never been so cold to her. Even when she threw herself into Mu Gaofei's embrace, he didn't give her such an expression. But now Huang Xinli actually treated her so coldly. Lu Xian immediately flew into a rage out of humiliation. She sneered and ridiculed, "You're just a useless odd-job disciple. How many contribution points can you have? Take a look at yourself. This universe pagoda is not a place for trash like you to enter." "Do you dare to say that again?" Zhuowen's eyes narrowed dangerously as he said coldly. Lu Xian trembled and couldn't help but take a step back. But remembering that Huang Xinli was just a coward, Lu Xian steadied herself and coldly said, "I haven't seen you for a few days and you've become quite unreasonable. Am I wrong to say that you're trash and useless?" But just as LV Xian finished speaking, her right cheek was fiercely slapped, and a palm print appeared on it. "You? Who hit me just now?" Lu Xian's eyes immediately turned red. She subconsciously thought that Huang Xinli had hit her, but when she turned to look, she found that Huang Xinli was standing in the same place, not moving at all. Mu Gaofei, who was originally standing beside Lu Xian, also revealed a strange expression. He also didn't see the person who hit Lu Xian. Just now, he only felt a sudden gust of wind, and then a handprint appeared on Lu Xian's cheek. "Brother Fei, did you see who hit me? You have to get justice for me." Lu Xian covered her cheek and immediately threw herself into Mu Gaofei's embrace, sobbing. Mu Gaofei puffed up his chest and looked at Joan with an unfriendly gaze. "Junior sister, I saw with my own eyes that it was this trash who hit you. Don't worry, Brother Fei will immediately help you vent your anger." LV Xian wept. Although she knew that Huang Xinli didn't move in order to please Mu Gaofei, she still nodded and said softly, "Brother Fei, you're the best." Mu Gaofei laughed and walked toward Jun. He raised his head and looked at Jun with extreme disdain. "Surnamed Zhuowen, if you don't want to die, then immediately kneel down and crawl under my crotch until you reach LV Xian. Then let her slap you 18 times. Jun couldn't be bothered with this clown, Mu Gaofei, and directly slapped him. The strength of this palm strike was too strong. Mu Gaofei was sent flying, his broken teeth scattered all over the ground. His face was even more distorted. It was obvious that his facial bones had been shattered. Mu Gaofei landed on the ground. His entire body was twitching, and his breathing was weak. He was actually crippled by this slap. "Fei, Brother Fei?" LV Xian, who was originally weeping, saw this scene. She was so scared that her beautiful face turned pale. She looked at this scene in horror. In LV Xian's eyes, Mu Gaofei, whose strength was ranked in the top 10 of the outer court disciples, was defeated by that trash Huang Xinli with one slap. Moreover, looking at Mu Gaofei's appearance, it was obvious that he was completely crippled by that slap. LV Xian wasn't an idiot. She immediately realized that there was a great disparity between Mu Gaofei and Huang Xinli's strength. Zhuan no longer paid attention to these two clowns, LV Xian and Mu Gaofei. Instead, he directly walked towards the Universe Tower. The Universe Tower occupied a large area. It was surrounded by plazas. There were actually many shops located there. People came and went. It was very lively. Zhuan walked to the entrance of the Universe Tower and was stopped by the guards. "A mere odd job disciple. Do you have enough contribution points?" The guard looked at Zhuowen's odd job disciple robe with disdain. Unfortunately, just as the guard finished speaking, Yun took out the Emperor's sword. With a slash, the guard exploded into a bloody mist. "Contribution points? I really don't have any." Zhuowen sneered as he said this. Then he directly entered the Universe Tower, leaving behind the stunned crowd in the surrounding plaza. "Are you kidding me? That odd job disciple actually killed the Universe Tower's guard with one slash? How can he be so strong? Also, what is that guy trying to do? Killing the guards and entering the Universe Pagoda? Are you trying to court death?" After a moment of silence, the plazas were in an uproar. The noise never stopped. The Universe Tower had a total of 9 floors. Each floor had a large number of disciples. The higher the floor, the more elite the disciples. The moment Zhuowen entered the Universe Tower, he took out the Thunderfire Sword and Blood Immortal Sword. He told the two of them not to hold back and kill all the disciples in the Universe Tower. At the same time, Zhuowen set up a level 7 Great Formation at the entrance of the Universe Tower. Anyone who wanted to take advantage of the chaos and escape the Universe Tower would be killed by this powerful level 7 Great Formation. Just like this, Zhuowen slowly headed towards the top of the Universe Pagoda. Everywhere he passed, there was a reign of terror. The disciples within the Universe Pagoda were basically unable to withstand a single sword strike from Zhuowen. In just a moment, Zhuowen reached the 8th floor of the Universe Tower. He found that most of the core disciples of the Universe sect were on the 8th floor of the Universe Tower. Although there were many core disciples whose cultivation levels weren't weak and had reached the virtual sky world, in Zhuowen's eyes, they were all jokes. His current strength was already comparable to an ordinary virtual sky realm 8th step cultivator. How could these core disciples be his opponents? Who dares to behave atrociously in my universe tower? You're simply courting death. When Zhuan was constantly reaping the lives of the core disciples on the 8th floor, he finally alarmed the elder on the 9th floor. The elder has come out. We're saved. On the 8th floor, the eyes of the core disciples who had not lost their lives were filled with hope when they heard this voice. It was a black-clothed old man. His essence, chi, and spirit were extremely powerful. His cultivation should be around the virtual sky's 6th step. In my eyes, you're no different from trash. Zhuan suddenly slashed out with the king sword in his right hand and used the 7th move of the Tao of Destruction sword art, sword swimming through the great void. The mysterious sword art was like flowing water, constantly surging back and forth between Zhuan's hands. Zhuan was like a fish swimming in water, taking mysterious steps and passing by the black-clothed old man. The black-robed old man's face changed drastically. Soon after, he discovered that his entire body was collapsing. This was because countless sword lights had filled his body, constantly slicing him apart layer by layer. In the end, the illusory bridge in his body completely collapsed under the terrifying attack of the sword lights. Plop. The black-clothed old man instantly fell to the ground without any signs of life. Clearly he was dead. The 8th floor fell into a daze. The black-clothed old man was quite famous in the Qiankuan sect. An expert of the virtual sky's 6th step couldn't even last one move in front of this odd-job disciple? Who is it? How dare you kill our Qiankuan sect's elder? The moment the black-clothed old man was killed by Zhuan, the elders on the 9th floor all came out. Waves of terrifying divine senses wrapped around Zhuan like a hurricane, as if they wanted to suppress Zhuan. Unfortunately, Zhuan's divine soul was extremely powerful. These divine senses were instantly annihilated by him. Furthermore, Zhuan used the soul-slaying technique to heavily injure the divine souls of several elders. In just an instant, more than 20 figures rushed out of the 9th floor of the Qiankuan Tower and surrounded Zhuan in the middle. The leader was an old man in a white robe. This old man had white hair and a youthful complexion. His aura was extremely powerful. Virtual Sky 8th Step. Chapter 2164. Noisy, Supreme Elder. The 20 or so figures that flew out from the top floor bowed respectfully to the white-robed old man who was their leader. The white-robed elder nodded and waved his sleeve. Suddenly, the Thunder Fire Sword and Blood Immortal Sword that were wreaking havoc on the 8th floor of the Qiankuan Tower were stopped by a terrifying force. Zhuan slashed out with his sword and immediately split open the stagnant force. The Thunder Fire Sword and Blood Immortal Sword circled around him. I didn't expect you to be so powerful even though your cultivation is only at the 5th step of the Void Sky realm. Or you? The white-robed elder's eyes narrowed as he asked in a deep voice. Sword Dragon slashes the sky. Zhuan didn't waste any time. He held the King Sword in his right hand and slashed out. The sword Qi soared into the sky and transformed into a huge dragon that charged towards the white-robed elder. The white-robed elder narrowed his eyes but didn't care. Although the sword was powerful, he didn't think it was powerful. The white-robed elder waved his sleeve and a powerful divine power burst out, easily blocking the huge dragon formed by the sword Qi. However, the moment the white-robed elder blocked the huge dragon, the dragon's aura continued to rise. The purple color on the huge dragon's body became more and more intense, and the dragon's strength became more and more powerful. Zhuan used the power of Tao Will to increase the power of the sword dragon slashes the sky by 7 times. The white-robed elder was caught off guard by the sudden change. Boom! The purple dragon slashes the sky suddenly exploded. The terrifying purple energy was like rain falling in all directions. Even the white-robed elder was shocked by the energy that burst out in an instant. Rumble! The power of the purple dragon grew stronger and stronger. It was like a high-pressure gas that exploded in an instant. It exploded inside the Qiankuan Tower. Then, the Qiankuan Tower trembled violently and finally collapsed. On the other hand, the plaza around the Universe Tower was in an uproar. All the disciples stared blankly at the collapsed Universe Tower. However, they quickly realized that something big had happened to the Universe Tower. At this moment, The aftermath of the Qingkuan Tower's shattering spread out, and the surrounding square began to collapse and shatter. Then, most of the disciples in the square with low cultivation were blown to smithereens by the terrifying aftermath. On the plaza, miserable cries and sounds of people fleeing for their lives could be heard without end. All the cultivators scattered like monkeys when the tree fell, and they all left the Universe Pagoda as they looked at the Universe Pagoda that had already been completely reduced to ruins and the surrounding plaza in fear. Within the shattered Qingkuan Tower, a gigantic purple dragon leaped out. In front of the gigantic dragon's head, the white-robed old man kept forming hand seals. Light arrays appeared in front of the white-robed old man, blocking the purple dragon's attack. Behind the white-robed elder were the remaining 20-odd elders of Qingkuan sect. Someone is attacking the Universe Pagoda, and he's fighting with the elder on the top floor of the Universe Pagoda. Who is it? When they saw the scene of the purple dragon, many of the disciples that had escaped from the plaza revealed frightened gazes. They raised their heads to look at the purple dragon, and soon after, they saw an ordinary-looking young man. This young man was wearing the uniform of a servant disciple, and he looked ordinary. However, such an ordinary-looking servant disciple was actually standing on the head of the purple dragon with a sword in his hand, suppressing the white-robed old man. Servant disciple? Are my eyes playing tricks on me? Why is this servant disciple so sick? I know this person. Isn't he Huang Xinli? I remember that this guy was dumped by his girlfriend a few days ago, and he was depressed. How did he suddenly become so strong after not seeing him for a few days? So it's Huang Xinli. Isn't he the trash of the servant disciples? The one who got along really badly with the servant disciples? Many of the disciples were discussing, and many of them recognized Zhuowen as Huang Xinli. In an inconspicuous corner of the crowd, LV Xian's beautiful eyes saw everything. Her jade-like hand covered her mouth as she looked at the scene in disbelief. How can he be so strong? Am I dreaming? LV Xian muttered softly, her beautiful eyes filled with disbelief. She was too familiar with Huang Xinli, and they were childhood friends. If Huang Xinli was really so strong, it was impossible for her not to know. However, the scene in front of her made her believe that Huang Xinli, who she had once abandoned, was fighting against the Qingkuan sect's supreme elder, and he wasn't at a disadvantage. Rumble! The white-robed old man snorted coldly, and his right hand quickly pointed out. Instantly, the light array started to spin rapidly, and a terrifying suction force appeared. Soon after, the purple dragon was sucked into the light array. How dare you! Not only did you kill in the Universe Pagoda, you even destroyed it. Today I will kill you. The white-robed old man's eyes were filled with murderous intent. He took a step forward and rushed toward Zhuowen. At the same time, more than 20 figures behind the white-robed old man rushed out, ready to surround Zhuowen. These 20 figures were the upper echelons of the Qingkuan sect. Among them, there were 3 7th-step Void Sky Masters, and many 6th-step Void Sky Masters. It had to be said that the upper echelons of the Qingkuan sect were much stronger than those of High Heaven sect and Dark Illusion sect. At least, this lineup was stronger than the Dark Illusion sect. Zhuowen's eyes were filled with murderous intent. He had come here to cause havoc in the Qingkuan sect, and he wasn't going to back down. Zhuowen immediately called out Di Ling, Zhang Ziqing, and the other 4. At the same time, he released the black-robed Zhuowen, and the black-robed Zhuowen directly revealed his true body, Devour. The huge Devour's body was like a mountain, covering the sky and suppressing the world. In an instant, it enveloped the entire Qingkuan sect. Devour faced the sky and roared. Invisible sound waves swept out like a gale, sweeping in all directions. The expressions of the white-robed old man and the others changed slightly. Di Ling, come with me to kill that old man. Zhang Ziqing, the 4 of you will deal with those 20 people. Zhuowen jumped on Devour's head and ordered the king's spirit. The king's spirit nodded, holding the halberd in his hand. His body moved like a shuttle, fighting the old man in the white robe. The 20 people behind the white-robed old man were blocked by Zhang Ziqing and the other 3. The murderous intent in Zhuowen's eyes grew stronger. Although the white-robed old man was also an 8th-step Void Sky Master, there was a big gap between him and the old ancestors of the 10 great sects. He should have just broken through not long ago. Now, the white-robed old man was fighting Di Ling, and he was at a disadvantage. If Devour helped him, the white-robed old man would die. At this moment, the white-robed old man became more and more frightened. The Emperor in front of him was also an 8th-step Void Sky Master, and his strength was much stronger than his. What made the white-robed old man even more afraid was the terrifying giant beast behind Di Ling. The pressure that the giant beast gave him was even more terrifying than Di Ling's. Peng. Chapter 2165. Devouring the Heaven and Earth Sect, Extreme Thunder and Extreme Fire. Is this the Thunder and Fire true God? The white-robed old man's pupils shrank. However, the crisis of life and death made him raise both of his hands. His palms emitted a blazing white light as he tried to block the claw. Boom! Devour's claw was powerful. As the claw slammed down, the thunder and fire energies fused together and exploded. The resulting power was terrifying, as if the air had been compressed. The white-robed old man's eyes were filled with rage. He felt as if all the bones in his body had shattered at this moment. His eyes were bloodshot, and he looked extremely terrifying. Pucci. The white-robed old man didn't hold on for long. He spat out a mouthful of blood as his face turned pale. The thunder and fire energies had seeped into his body, destroying his internal functions. Juan stood silently on Devour's head, looking down at the white-robed old man. His eyes were cold and ruthless. Why did you come to my Heaven and Earth sect to make trouble? Do you know the consequences of offending my Heaven and Earth sect? If Lord Qin Changsheng wasn't here, you wouldn't be able to do whatever you want, the white-robed old man roared. Juan said indifferently, I know that Qin Changsheng isn't here, so I came to make trouble. That old man brought a lot of people to Dongyu to capture me. He even wanted to kill me. Do you think I'll just let it go? The white-robed old man's eyes changed. He said in a low voice, You are Zhuowen? Didn't you say that the ancient teleportation formation in Dongyu was damaged? How did you come to Shiyu? King's spirit. Yuan didn't want to waste time talking nonsense with the white-robed old man. He called out, and the king's spirit, who was not far away, dashed over and thrust his halberd at the white-robed old man's vitals. The white-robed old man could only watch the king's spirit's attack. He couldn't resist because he was trying his best to resist Devour's attack. The king's spirit's halberd pierced through the white-robed old man's vitals. The white-robed old man's eyes widened in anger, and his whole body exploded into a cloud of blood mist. The virtual sky bridge inside his body was destroyed. As soon as the old man in the white robe died, more than 20 elders were defeated. With Devour and King Spirit's help, even if 3 of them were at Void Sky 7 steps, they couldn't do anything. Zhuan had killed them all. The battle at the Qiankuan Tower had long attracted the attention of the entire Qiankuan sect. One by one, the Qiankuan sect disciples rushed over and surrounded the Qiankuan Tower. Not good. The Supreme Elder has been killed. The other elders have also been killed. Who are these people? How can they be so terrifying? After the white-robed old man and the other elders were killed, the surrounding Qiankuan sect disciples fell silent. In fact, some of them were even trembling in fear, having lost their will to fight. Even the Supreme Elder and the other upper echelons had been killed. How could they, the ordinary disciples, be a match for this person? Zhuan stood on Devour's head and rose into the sky. He looked down at the Qiankuan sect disciples and said indifferently, I didn't want to kill more people. If you don't want to die, open the Qiankuan sect's protective array now and swear to leave the Qiankuan sect. Otherwise, the sword in my hand won't be polite. As soon as he finished speaking, all the Qiankuan sect disciples fell silent. Soon, some of the disciples began to tremble and swear to leave the Qiankuan sect. More and more disciples followed suit. At the same time, Zhuan noticed that the Qiankuan sect's protective array had been opened. All the disciples who have left the Qiankuan sect now leave the Qiankuan sect. If you stay here, don't blame me for not warning you when the Qiankuan sect is destroyed, Zhuan said again. Bush, bush, bush. As soon as Zhuan finished speaking, the disciples who knew what was good for them took out their flying divine items and left the Qiankuan sect. Of course, there were some stubborn disciples who refused to leave the Qiankuan sect. However, they were in the minority. Most of them were killed by Zhang Ziqing and the other three. Master, how do you plan to deal with the Qiankuan sect? Di Ling came to Zhuan's side and asked curiously. Devour. Zhuan said something that confused Di Ling. Then, Devour leaped into the sky above the Qiankuan sect. The heaven and earth sect was spread across 3 huge star continents, covering a vast area. Devour opened his mouth and a black whirlpool appeared in his mouth. A terrifying suction force came from the black whirlpool. Devour spat out the black whirlpool and it floated above the Qiankuan sect. The black whirlpool grew bigger and bigger until it almost covered the entire 3 continents. The king's spirit was shocked to find that the 3 planets were being sucked into the black vortex, and eventually, they were disappearing. Is this Devour's power? It's so powerful. Di Ling looked at the colossal object in awe. The continents were huge, much bigger than life planets. They could be compared to galaxies. The Qiankuan sect was made up of 3 continents. It was obvious how huge it was. However, Devour had easily devoured it. The power of the Qiankuan sect was incredible. Zhuan naturally swallowed the Qiankuan sect into Devour's inner world. Because the Qiankuan sect was so big, the resources inside were definitely richer than the Dark Mirage sect and High Heaven sect. If he slowly collected the resources inside, it would take him a lot of time. By then, he wouldn't have time to go to the Void Peak or the Demon Pearl sect. It's time to go to the Void Peak. Zhuan stood on Devour's head and said to Di Ling and the others. Then he flew toward the Void Peak. The Void Peak was also in Westyu. It wasn't too far from the Qiankuan sect. Yun only took 5 days to reach the Void Peak. As the name suggested, the Void Peak was a huge mountain. The mountain was huge, especially the bottom of the mountain. The area was comparable to the star continent. Moreover, the mountain had layers and layers. Each layer had an extreme space. It could be said that the Void Peak stood in the starry sky. Looking from afar, it was definitely a strange sight. Master, do we attack the Void Peak directly or do we use the Qiankuan sect's method? Di Ling asked. The same method. Zhuan smiled slyly. 2 months later, Qin Changxing and Fu Yuz finally arrived in Westyu. Brother Fu, the Qiankuan sect is closer. How about we go there first? In the cabin, Qin Changxing turned to look at Fu Yuz. He sounded a little anxious. Anyway, our sects are on the way. Let's go to the Qiankuan sect first. Fu Yuz nodded and directed the flying ship to move forward quickly. When Fu Yuz stopped the flying ship according to the coordinates given by Qin Changxing, they were all stunned. There was no Qiankuan sect on the old site. It was empty. There was nothing left, not even gravel. Brother Qin, where is the Qiankuan sect? Fu Yuz looked at Qin Changxing in confusion. Chapter 2166. Devil Pearl sect. Qin Changxing searched the old site of Cosmic Sect inside and out, but he still could not find any trace of Cosmic Sect. An ominous premonition arose in his heart. Brother Qin, could it be that Zhuowen's doing? Fu Yuz asked with a slight frown. Qin Changxing forcefully suppressed the anger in his heart and looked at Fu Yuz, saying, Brother Fu, let's go take a look at Void Rush Peak. It's not far from Cosmic Sect. Fu Yuz's eyes revealed a worried expression. He nodded, and the 2 of them boarded the flying ship and left. When the flying ship arrived at the coordinates of Void Rush Peak, they discovered that the place where Void Rush Peak was located was also empty. There was no trace of Void Rush Peak. Fu Yuz's expression also changed. He looked at Qin Changxing and discovered that the latter was also looking at him. The 2 of them both sensed that something was wrong. There's a flying ship passing by here. Let's go and ask. Qin Changxing suddenly said. Fu Yuz nodded and immediately ordered the higher-ups of Void Rush Peak in the flying ship to intercept the flying ship. There were only 5 people in the flying ship, 3 men and 2 women. Their cultivations were not high. At this moment, they walked down shakily and looked at Fu Yuz, Qin Changxing, and the others with fearful eyes. They could sense that the group before them was very powerful, so they did not dare to resist. Let me ask you, isn't this Void Rush Peak? Where's Void Rush Peak? Why is it gone? Fu Yuz took a deep breath and asked coldly. The man in the lead of the five revealed a strange expression and said, "Senior, could it be that you don't know what happened at Void Rush Peak?" What happened? Fu Yuz had a bad premonition. More than a month ago, a young man led a huge beast and 5 experts to destroy Void Rush Peak. It said that even Void Rush Peak's encampment was swallowed into the stomach of that huge beast. Moreover, it's not just the Emptiness Peak. The Qinkuan sect was also swallowed by the giant beast. Most of the disciples of the two sects have already left their respective sections. In Shiyu, the Qinkuan sect and the Emptiness Peak exist in name only. The man in the lead explained cautiously, but Fu Yuz and Qin Changxing's expressions became extremely unsightly. They did not need to guess. They knew that the young man with the huge beast was the Zhuan they were looking for Zhuan Peak. However, what they didn't understand was that before they left, they had already activated the defensive formation. How did Zhuan break through their defensive formation so quickly and destroy their sect's foundation? Of course, if they knew that Zhuan had snuck into the sect to achieve a breakthrough, they would be so angry that they would vomit blood. Where is that youth now? Qin Changxing asked murderously. The man in the lead shook his head and said, "I don't know about that. I only know that the young man vanished after devouring the Void Wave Peak. I don't know exactly where he went. Zhuan, you and I are irreconcilable. Since you dared to destroy my sect, I will exterminate your entire clan. I will not let off anyone related to you." Qin Changxing was truly furious. He, who had always been calm, involuntarily roared towards the sky, unable to control his emotions. The 5 people who were intercepted were all trembling. Qin Changxing's roar contained a terrifying sound wave power. The 5 of them could not bear it and were bleeding from their 7 orifices. Brother Qin, Yang Zhonghui sent a message. She said that Zhuan Peak is now in the Demonic Pearl sect and is attacking it. She asked for our support, Fu Yuz suddenly said. Qin Changxing said, "Let's go. Let's go to Southern Universe. I must kill this boy with my own hands." Fu Yuz naturally had no objections. The coldness in his eyes was extremely dense. Zhuan had annihilated his Void Rush Peak. This enmity was absolutely irreconcilable. Fu Yuz could not wait for Zhuan to die without a burial ground. Qin Changxing and Fu Yuz did not hesitate in the slightest. They steered the flying ship and disappeared, leaving behind the 5 people who were bleeding from their 7 orifices due to the sound wave. They stared blankly at the flying ship in the distance. At the border of Western Universe, Qin Changxing and Fu Yuz led their respective high-level cultivators to the center of a gravel area. Fortunately, this old man hid an ancient teleportation array here. Otherwise, if we wanted to go to Southern Universe Demonic Pearl sect, we would have to use a flying ship. It would be a waste of time. Qin Changxing swept to the side of a gravel that was 10 feet in size. With a wave of his sleeve, the gravel collapsed inch by inch. A blazing white light burst out from it, and then a complicated array was revealed. It was the ancient teleportation array. That little bastard thought that he had destroyed the ancient teleportation array of Western Universe. He probably didn't expect that I still had a trick up my sleeve. This time, we must take him down completely. Qin Changxing sneered. Fu Yuz's eyes flashed. Brother Qin, where do you plan to teleport to this time? Directly into the Demonic Pearl sect? Qin Changxing nodded. Of course. Didn't Yang Zhonghui say that Zhuan is forcefully destroying the defensive array of the Demonic Pearl sect? We'll teleport into the Demonic Pearl sect and wait for an opportunity to take action. When the time comes, we'll catch him off guard and kill Zhuan. Fu Yuz nodded repeatedly. Clearly, he felt that Qin Changxing's plan was not bad. I'm going to activate the array. You all go in. After saying that, Qin Changxing formed a seal with both hands. The ancient teleportation array immediately burst out with light. Fu Yuz and the others naturally hurried into the array. The white light flashed, and then Chen Changxing's group disappeared into the white light. At the encampment of the Southern Universe Demonic Pearl sect, invisible ripples spread out outside the huge sect, as if countless gravel had fallen onto the surface of the water. This was the defensive array of the Demonic Pearl sect. Outside the sect, an extremely huge beast was madly attacking the Demonic Pearl sect. The seemingly sturdy defensive array of the Demonic Pearl sect was on the verge of collapse under the concentrated attacks of the huge beast, as if it would collapse at any moment. Inside the Demonic Pearl sect, all the disciples were ready to go. They looked at this scene nervously, and the atmosphere was extremely solemn. The ancestor of the Demonic Pearl sect, Yang Zhonghui, and the sect master, Yang Muqiu, were both present. Because Zhuan had wasted a lot of time dealing with the Heaven and Earth sect in Void Rush Peak, when he was on his way to Southern Universe, he just happened to run into Yang Zhonghui and the others who were rushing back. It was inevitable that the two of them would fight. Yang Zhonghui's side was weaker than Chen Changxing's and Fu Yu's strength. Although Yang Zhonghui had a secondary heaven-breaking divine artifact, Wen also had the supreme shining sun blade. With Old Man Ruthless strength and the supreme shining sun blade, Yang Zhonghui was naturally no match for him. Zhuan's side also had an 8 steps void sky expert like Di Ling. In that clash, Yang Zhonghui's side suffered heavy losses. Many of their higher-ups died. Yang Zhonghui was defeated and retreated into the Demonic Pearl sect's defensive array. She held on for dear life. For a while, Zhuan could not do anything to the Demonic Pearl sect's defensive array. After all, the Demonic Pearl sect's defensive array was presided over by an 8 steps void sky elder like Yang Zhonghui, so it was much stronger than usual. Chapter 2167. Union, Forefather, Zhuowen's doppelganger is too terrifying. I'm afraid the defensive array won't last long. Yang Muqiu came to Yang Zhonghui's side, her face pale. Yang Zhonghui's eyes were gloomy, but soon, she looked relieved. Yang Muqiu noticed the change in Yang Zhonghui's expression and asked, "Forefather, what's wrong?" Yang Zhonghui said, "Chen Changxing and Fu Yuz have brought their people here. They will be teleported to the Demonic Pearl sect soon. You go and help them. Remember, don't make a fuss. This time, they want to kill that little bastard Zhuan." Joy was revealed in Yang Muqiu's beautiful eyes. She hurriedly nodded and quietly left. Outside the Demonic Pearl sect, Nguyen stood on Devour's head with King Spirit, Old Man Wu Qing, and the others behind him. What did Yang Muqiu say to Yang Zhonghui? Then he left, King Spirit said, squinting. Zhuo also noticed Yang Muqiu's small movements. He frowned slightly and vaguely felt that something was wrong. Old Man Wu Qing, when I left West Yu, are you sure all the ancient teleportation arrays in West Yu were destroyed? Zhuo asked in a low voice. Old Man Wu Qing's eyes twinkled. He said uncertainly, they should have been destroyed. Of course, if someone deliberately hid the ancient teleportation arrays, I can't do anything about it. On the other hand, Zhuo Wen's mood sank to the bottom of the valley. The ominous premonition in his heart grew even stronger. He said, Chen Changsheng and Fu Yuz should have already arrived in Shiyu and discovered that their respective sects were destroyed by me. With their personalities, they will definitely turn the world upside down to seek revenge. Yang Zhonghui is like a cornered beast. She will ask them for help. If the ancient teleportation arrays in West Yu are destroyed, it will take them at least a month to get to South Yu from West Yu. I have plenty of time, but, Old Man Wu Qing said, are you worried that Chen Changxing and Fu Yu still have a backup plan? Yes, that's what I'm afraid of. If those two really have something up their sleeves, then they can use the ancient teleportation array to immediately teleport to Nanyu, or even directly into the Magic Pearl sect, Zhuan said in a deep voice. If there is such a possibility, do you have any good strategies to deal with it? Or should we give up on attacking the Demonic Pearl sect and leave immediately? Old Man Wu Qing asked. Zhuan shook his head. It's impossible for me to give up on attacking the Demonic Pearl sect. I must destroy it. Even if Chen Changxing and Fu Yuz come, they won't be able to stop me. The only way now is to use bait. Among the few of us, only my doppelganger and you have the power to destroy the Devil Pearl sect. But I think Qin Changxing and the others definitely won't let me go, so when the time comes, I won't even have a chance to act. With that said, Yuan set up a shielding array formation outside. Then, Yuan pushed with his right hand, and divine power poured out, condensing into a dwarf old man in front of him. He was exactly the same as old man Wu Qing. The Void Sky 5 steps had the ability to create things, but of course, it could only create very simple creatures. Although Yuan had used his sacred power to create a dwarf old man like old man Wu Qing, this old man had no soul or consciousness. He was like a puppet, and his aura was even worse than a mortal's. Kid, the puppet you created can't fool them at all. It's like a dead person, old man Wu Qing shook his head. Yuan was not annoyed at all. They won't pay attention to you deliberately. Moreover, I cultivate the shapeless all-life so I can use it to simulate your aura. As long as they don't get too close and deliberately investigate you, they won't be able to tell that it's fake. With that, Yuan used the shapeless all-life to give the puppet beside him a powerful aura. Moreover, this aura was almost exactly the same as old man Wu Qing's. However, if one looked carefully, they would be able to find the flaws in the puppet's aura. You hide first. If there really is a special situation, I'll leave the matter of destroying the demonic pearl sect to you. If there isn't, we'll directly destroy the demonic pearl sect in one go, Yuan said. Old man Wu Qing nodded and immediately formed seals with both hands. An invisible ripple spread out from old man Wu Qing's body, and the old man disappeared into the starry sky. To be more precise, this old man had merged his aura with the starry sky through a formation technique. There was no distinction between the two. Ordinary cultivators would find it difficult to detect the difference between the two. After old man Wu Qing hid in the starry sky, the demonic pearl sect's great formation finally began to collapse. However, Yuan smelled something unusual. This was because he found that there was no surprise or worry in Yang Zhonghui's eyes. Instead, they were filled with confidence. Yang Zhonghui died. Although Yuan sensed something amiss, he still controlled Devour to send out a palm strike. Lightning and fire intertwined on his palm, and all the cultivators in the demonic pearl sect could feel the terrifying power that could destroy the world. Yang Zhonghui's beautiful eyes turned solemn. She formed a hand seal and flicked her finger. An embroidery needle shot out. Although the embroidery needle was not eye-catching, Yuan dared not look down on it. It was a heaven-breaking divine artifact. Rumble! The embroidery needle collided with the lightning and fire energy. Immediately after, countless red threads burst out from the embroidery needle, forming a net to entangle Devour's right palm. The red threads were extremely strange. Even the terrifying lightning and fire energy could not cut through the red threads. It could not even break them. Attack! At the same time, Yang Zhonghui suddenly shouted. Next, two auras that were even more terrifying than Yang Zhonghui's erupted from the depths of the demonic pearl sect. Soon after, two imposing figures flew over. Yuan was naturally not unfamiliar with these two figures. They were naturally Qin Changxing and Fu Yu's. Little bastard, you're dead. How dare you destroy my cosmic sect? I'll make sure you die without a burial place. Qin Changxing's eyes were filled with hatred. Although Fu Yu's did not say anything, the killing intent in his eyes was not any weaker than Qin Changxing's. Yuan, you didn't expect Qin Changxing and Fu Yu's to come to the demonic pearl sect, did you? Yang Zhonghui controlled the embroidery needle, her beautiful eyes filled with mockery. The embroidery needle was extremely fast. It quickly twined around Devour's right hand. The red threads bound his right hand tightly, making it hard for him to move. Moreover, these red threads were extremely tough. Even the lightning and fire energy could not break them. It was extremely strange and terrifying. Swoosh, swoosh. Qin Changxing and Fu Yu's were extremely fast. They arrived before Devour in the blink of an eye. Qin Changxing held the long sword with the pattern, slashing at Devour's glabella. Fu Yu's wielded the meteor hammer, mercilessly beating Devour while he was down. The attacks of the two heaven-breaking divine artifacts combined were extremely terrifying. Even with Devour's tough body, he didn't dare to resist these two terrifying attacks. Chapter 2168. Starry Sky Fault. Although Zhuowen was decisive enough to retreat quickly, Qin Changxing and Qin Changxing didn't hold back. However, Qin Changxing and Fu Yu's didn't restrain their power. The two attacks were too terrifying. Although they hadn't reached Devour yet, the shockwaves of their attacks were like tornadoes hitting Devour. Devour howled in pain. The scales on his chest shattered, and blood gushed out. At the same time, Hun, Di Ling, and the others vomited blood, their faces pale. Apparently, their injuries weren't light. "Get into the spirit ring," Zhuowen roared. With a wave of his sleeve, he put Devour, Di Ling, and the others into the spirit ring. Then, he flapped his torch dragon wings and flew away. "This kid is so decisive. Did he know we were here to ambush him?" Fu Yu's murmured, looking at the fleeing figure in surprise. "Chase. This kid can't escape from our palms." Qin Changxing didn't waste his breath. Instead, he quickly chased after Zhuowen. Fu Yu's and Yang Zhonghui glanced at each other before following closely behind. "Faster! Faster!" Zhuowen's divine sense detected Qin Changxing's group of three chasing after him, and his expression changed slightly. These three were all experts of the 8 steps void sky, so their speed was naturally not slow. Especially Qin Changxing, he had a secret technique that could actually make the three behind him work together, instantly increasing their speed. Originally, there was still some distance between Zhuowen and the three of them, but now, the distance was shrinking. If they were ordinary void sky 8 steps experts, Zhuowen wouldn't be afraid. However, the three behind him were stronger than Yu Wuxi and Ling Binbing. They were experts at the same level as Magatama from Heavenly Demon Island. But that wasn't all. All three of them possessed secondary heaven-crushing divine artifacts. There was no need to explain how powerful these secondary heaven-crushing divine artifacts were. Even old Wu Qing didn't dare to fight against the three of them, let alone Zhuowen. Facing the three of them head-on was no different from courting death for Zhuowen. "They're really hot on my heels." Zhuowen paid attention to Qin Changxing's group as they approached him. At the same time, he madly used his Dao Will on the torch dragon wings on his back. Under the amplification of the sevenfold Dao Will, the 9 dragons on the torch dragon wings were dyed purple, and each of them was as large as a dragon. The 9 enormous purple dragons hovered in the void behind Zhuowen. It was a spectacular sight. At the same time, Zhuowen's speed was raised to the extreme. However, even with the torch dragon wings and the amplification from the 7th level Dao Insight, Zhuowen was still unable to shake off Qin Changxing and the others. 3 days later, Zhuowen was still fleeing while Qin Changxing and the other two were still in pursuit. The distance between the two sides had already shrunk to around 100 zhang. The distance between them was simply too short for experts of their level. Behind them, Yang Zhonghui's beautiful face suddenly changed. Qin Changxing and Fu Yu's also noticed the change in Yang Zhonghui's expression, and Qin Changxing couldn't help but ask, "Junior sister Yang, what's wrong?" Yang Zhonghui's pretty face was gloomy as she said, "The Devil Pearl sect was attacked. Now, the Devil Pearl sect has completely fallen. It's said that most of the sect's disciples are dead." "What? Who is attacking the demonic Pearl sect?" Qin Changxing and Fu Yu asked in unison. "It's the dwarf old man beside that little bastard Zhuowen. That old man's strength is very terrifying. It's said that he's an expert at the peak of the 8th step of the void sky realm," Yang Zhonghui said in a deep voice. "That's impossible. That dwarf old man has always been with that Zhuowen. Previously, he was also kept in that Zhuowen's spirit ring. We chased after him for 3 days and 3 nights. That Zhuowen simply didn't have the time to release that dwarf old man. Even if he did release him, there's no way we wouldn't know about it," Qin Changxing immediately refuted. However, Yang Zhonghui was extremely irritated as she said, "The problem now is that my Devil Pearl sect has already been destroyed. Forgive me for not being able to accompany the two of you." After saying this, Yang Zhonghui decisively left Qin Changxing and Fu Yu, no longer chasing after Zhuowen. Instead, she turned around and rushed towards the Devil Pearl sect. Right now, Yang Zhonghui was very worried about the safety of the sect's disciples. If the Devil Pearl sect really was destroyed because of this, then she would become a sinner for all eternity. "Brother Qin, what do we do?" Fu Yuz asked with a frown. Chase? Continue chasing, we've almost caught up to that little bastard. We can't just let him go like this, Qin Changxing said viciously. Although the two of them were also rather worried about the higher-ups they brought, compared to this, they were more concerned about getting rid of this scourge in advance. These two old fellows really are chasing me to the death. Zhuowen, who was fleeing in front, naturally discovered that Yang Zhonghui had left. He knew that Yang Zhonghui should have known that the Devil Pearl sect had already been destroyed by Old Man Wu Qing. Originally, in Zhuowen's plan, Old Man Wu Qing had destroyed the Devil Pearl sect, so naturally, he wouldn't let go of the higher-ups that Fu Yuz and Qin Changxing brought. Zhuowen thought that these two old fellows would also return to the Devil Pearl sect like Yang Zhonghui because they were worried about the people he brought. At that time, he would naturally be able to escape with his life. But now, he realized that he was wrong. Qin Changxing and Fu Yu's killing intent towards him far surpassed their worry for their own people. What should I do now? I'm afraid that it won't be long before these two old fellows catch up to me. Zhuowen frowned slightly. If Old Man Wu Qing was by his side now, he might not necessarily be afraid of Fu Yuz and Qin Changxing, these two old fellows. But the problem now was that Old Man Wu Qing wasn't by his side. Although Devour had completely recovered to his peak state by relying on the heavenly domain's starry sky essence, with Devour's strength, he could at most block one of Qin Changxing and Fu Yuz. As for the other person, Zhuowen's original body was definitely no match for him, and the King's Spirit and Zhang Jiqing's group were definitely no match for him either. There's a starry sky fault in front of us. We actually came to a starry sky fault. Our luck is really extraordinary. Qin Changxing exclaimed softly. His gaze noticed the spectacle hundreds of millions of miles in front of him, and the smile on the corner of his mouth grew wider. At the end of the line, there was no longer a starry sky, but a starry sky fault. The so-called starry sky fault meant that this starry sky was not complete, nor was it a seamless whole. Instead, it was like a piece of white paper that had many strips cut into it. The starry sky ahead was like a piece of white paper that had been cut into strips. The starry sky was separated layer by layer, and between the starry sky fault was a deep and bottomless darkness. No one knew what was in this darkness. But basically, any cultivator who entered the starry sky fault never came out. Zhuowen also noticed the starry sky fault in front of him, and his expression changed greatly. He naturally knew about the starry sky fault. It was the most terrifying place in the southern universe and the entire star field. Inside the starry sky fault was an incomparably deep abyss of darkness. It was said that cultivators who entered the starry sky fault never came out. Therefore, it was said that if anyone accidentally entered the starry sky fault, they would die without a doubt. Chapter 2169. Crisis. Zhuowen's face turned ugly as he looked at Qin Changxing and Fu Yuz. Qin Changxing and Fu Yuz weren't in a hurry to capture Zhuowen. In their eyes, Zhuowen was like a turtle in a jar. He couldn't escape from their clutches. Little bastard, you'd better surrender. The hatred in Qin Changxing's eyes grew even more intense as he slowly walked toward Zhuowen. At the same time, he waved his sleeve and a surge of divine power appeared in the shape of a fan, sealing off all of Zhuowen's paths of escape. Zhuowen's eyes were gloomy as he sighed. He had no choice but to summon Devour again. Di Ling, Zhang Jiqing, and the other four also flew out of their spirit rings, standing next to Zhuowen. They looked at Qin Changxing and Fu Yuz with vigilance. Devour raised his head and roared. He dashed toward Qin Changxing at an extremely fast speed. He knew that he had no other choice but to risk his life against Qin Changxing and Fu Yuz. How dare you? Qin Changxing sneered. He twisted his right wrist, and the patterns on the long sword in his hand burst out with blazing light. Then, sword light flowed out from the long sword, forming many mysterious patterns. Boom, boom, boom. In just an instant, Devour and Qin Changxing engaged in a fierce battle. The surface of Devour's body emitted terrifying lightning and fire energy, and the terrifying heat twisted the space around him. Fu Yuz wanted to help Qin Changxing, but Zhuowen, Di Ling, Zhang Jiqing, and the other four blocked Fu Yuz's path. Zhuowen, Do you really think you can stop me with just a guy at the early stage of the Void Sky 8th stage, for Void Sky 7th stage, and your weak main body? Ridiculous. Fu Yu sneered again and again. The meteor hammer in his hand whistled out without holding back. Instantly, a terrifying meteor shower shot out from the surface of the meteor hammer. Its power was terrifying, and its momentum was terrifying. Fu Yu's strength was indeed terrifying. He was actually able to forcibly suppress Zhuo Wen's group of 6 by himself. Especially the meteor hammer in Fu Yu's hand. Every time he swung it, a small meteor shower would erupt. Its strength was extremely terrifying. Zhuo Wen's group of 6 were having a hard time blocking it. On the other hand, on Devour's side, although Chen Chongqing was intimidating and had a secondary heaven-breaking divine weapon, he didn't have an obvious advantage. Devour. They were evenly matched. Their battle was getting Chen Chongqing Tian's main body. Although Chen Chongqing and Devour's editor's group and Fu Yu's and Devour's main body, Fu Yu's, and Zhuo Wen's main body's group. Fu Yu's Fu. Huanling. After a round of battle, each of the 6 people had wounds all over their bodies. They had more or less suffered injuries. Harumph, your clone's fighting capacity is really intimidating. But after you're defeated, Brother Chen and I will join hands to kill you all. Fu Yu's was surprised by Devour's fighting capacity, but he wasn't worried. He knew that as long as he could kill the 6 of them, he could join hands with Chen Chongqing to take down Devour easily. While the battle was in full swing, they didn't notice that a pair of giant scarlet eyes had appeared in the space vault behind them. The pair of scarlet eyes scanned the surroundings. Then, they fixed their attention on Devour, who was fighting Chen Chongqing. Their calm eyes revealed a gleam of surprise. Rumble. The scarlet eyes slowly disappeared into the fault in space. Then, the surrounding fault in space began to shatter and collapse. In the collapsed fault in space, a huge black spiral appeared. An unprecedented suction force came from the black spiral. The surrounding space fault was sucked in by the suction force, disappearing into the depths of the black spiral. Everyone who was originally fighting also noticed the black spiral that had inexplicably appeared at the center of the spatial fault. In particular, the terrifying suction force caused everyone to be horrified. What's going on? Why is the space fault changing? Chen Chongqing stopped moving, circulating his divine power to resist the suction force from the black spiral. The others didn't dare to move either. They all tried to resist the suction force. The suction force was too intimidating. If they moved, they would be distracted and fall into the black spiral. Zhuo Wen's face changed. He found that the suction force from the black spiral in the center of the space fault was somewhat similar to Devour's devouring power. Moreover, Devour was using his devouring power to resist the suction force. He could even perform some simple actions in the suction force. Zhuo Wen observed that no matter if it was his body, the king's spirit, Chen Chongqing, or Fu Yu's, they didn't dare to move because they were trying their best to resist the suction force from the black spiral. Once they moved, they would be distracted, and they would be sucked into the black spiral. At this moment, Chen Chongqing was trying his best to resist the suction force. He felt that the suction force was proportional to the amount of divine power he was using. In other words, the more divine power he used to resist, the stronger the suction force would be. Otherwise, with his divine power, he would be able to resist the suction force more easily than the king's spirit and the others. However, the current situation was that he was affected by the suction force just like the king's spirit and the others. That was why he had such a conjecture. Swoosh. While Chen Chongqing was analyzing the suction force, an ear-piercing noise came. Chen Chongqing saw Devour slowly moving toward him. Although he was moving slowly, he was coming. At the same time, Devour stretched out a giant claw and mercilessly slashed at Chen Chongqing's face. Bastard! How can you not be affected by the black spiral? Chen Chongqing couldn't help but curse. However, seeing the giant claw getting closer and closer, his heart raced. At this moment, he was stuck between a rock and a hard place. If he resisted, he would definitely be sucked into the spatial fault by the black spiral, but if he didn't resist, he would be struck directly by the claw. At that time, he would also be sucked into the black spiral due to his injuries. It could be said that whether he moved or not, the result would be the same. Fight! Qin Changxing shouted. His left hand formed a sword seal and quickly pointed at the long sword in his hand. Then, countless sword lights burst out from the long sword. Layers of sword lights overlapped, forming a massive ancient totem that pounded on Devour's massive claw. Surprisingly, it shattered Devour's massive claw, causing blood to spurt out crazily. On the other hand, Devour was blown away by the terrifying force, flying toward the black spiral. Qin Changxing's divine power poured out in an attempt to stabilize his body, but he found that it was of no use. Chapter 2170. Devour Zhuowen's eyes were dark and gloomy. He constantly used his devouring power to cover Devour's body, trying to stabilize his body. However, the momentum was too great. Even with Devour's devouring power, he couldn't stabilize his body. Devour roared. He opened his mouth and spat out a black vortex. The terrifying devouring power acted on his body, and at the moment Devour was about to be sucked into the black vortex, he was able to stop himself. Zhuowen heaved a sigh of relief. Devour's clone had almost been sucked into the space vault. If that happened, the consequences would be unimaginable. However, Qin Changxing wasn't as lucky as Devour. He was almost dragged away by the black vortex. No matter how strong his god power was, he couldn't resist the suction. The moment Qin Changxing was sucked into the black vortex, his eyes flashed crazily. The long sword in his right hand slashed his left palm, and his blood dyed the blade red. Swoosh! Then he threw out the long sword. The red sword looked like a viper, darting toward Zhuowen's real body. This old man is really ruthless. Zhuowen's real body looked at the long sword, his pupils shrinking to the size of needles. He couldn't help but curse under his breath. Feeling helpless, he took out the Supreme Glorious Sun Saber. At this moment, Yuan only had the Supreme Glorious Sun Saber that could resist the sword. However, Zhuowen wasn't that confident because the Supreme Glorious Sun Blade wasn't a true sub-heaven-breaking divine artifact. It was a pseudo-heaven-breaking divine artifact that was between a void divine artifact and a sub-heaven-breaking divine artifact. Bang! Bang! Under the control of Zhuowen's soul consciousness, the Supreme Glorious Sun Saber covered many suns and attacked the long sword with patterns. The sword and the saber intertwined in just a blink of an eye. As Zhuowen was using his god power to control his body and his soul consciousness to control the Supreme Glorious Sun Saber, he wasn't affected by the black vortex. Of course, if the long sword could break through the Supreme Glorious Sun Saber, Zhuowen's balance would be broken instantly. Either he would be killed by the long sword or be swallowed by the black vortex. The five of you, hurry up and enter Devour's internal world. Zhuowen looked at the 5 king spirits with a dark expression. The 5 kings finally reacted. They didn't know when Devour was slowly moving toward them. Under the threat of the black spiral, only Devour could move freely. Of course, it was also because of his innate devouring power. The Supreme Glorious Sun Saber and the patterned longsword clashed more and more fiercely. Sparks flew like fireworks and were exceptionally dazzling. As expected of a secondary heaven-shattering divine artifact, the totem sword was actually able to firmly suppress the Supreme Glorious Sun Blade. Especially after the totem sword was dyed red by Qin Changxing's blood, its power became even stronger. A small crack actually appeared on the surface of the Supreme Glorious Sun Blade. At this moment, Devour had come to Di Ling's team. He spat out a black vortex, taking the 5 of them into his body. Time to retreat. Zhuowen looked at the cracks on the Supreme Glorious Sun Saber's surface, his eyes filled with pain. He could feel that the Supreme Glorious Sun Saber's power was weakening. He was afraid that it wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. At this moment, Devour was slowly approaching Zhuowen. The moment Zhuowen was about to step into the devouring vortex, a thick sense of danger arose in Zhuowen's head. Behind Zhuowen, a meteor shower streaked across the sky. Amidst the meteor shower, a heavy meteor hammer was rapidly approaching. Zhuowen reacted quickly. He immediately retrieved the Supreme Glorious Sun Saber and placed it behind his back. Boom! Along with the meteor shower, the meteor hammer pounded on the supreme glorious sun saber. Cracks appeared on the surface of the saber as if it would break at any moment. After the meteor hammer, the patterned longsword slashed down. The scarlet sword light was like a strong wind, recklessly pouring down on the supreme glorious sun saber. Eventually, the supreme glorious sun saber couldn't endure the pincer attack of the patterned longsword and the meteor hammer. It shattered inch by inch, turning into powder. Zhuowen spat out a mouthful of blood from the impact. However, he reacted quickly enough and immediately entered the black vortex. Boom, boom. However, the meteor hammer and the patterned longsword didn't intend to stop. They pounded on Devour's body. Devour could only raise both of his hands to shield his body. However, his eyes were filled with thick murderous aura as he coldly gazed at Fu Yu's not far from him. Perhaps Fu Yu's had noticed Devour's murderous aura, but he didn't mind. He sneered, "You'd better get your ass into the space vault. It's considered taking revenge for Brother Qin, the Heaven and Earth sect, and the Void Rising Peak." Fu Yu sneered. He was still a distance away from Devour. Now, he was interfering with Devour from a distance. Of course, he wanted to send Devour into the space vault. Of course, Zhuowen could see Fu Yu's intention. Although he wanted to counterattack Fu Yu's, Devour's wounds were severe. Although he had the heavenly star pith, he needed a large amount of it. Zhuowen didn't have much heavenly domain star essence left, and he couldn't bear Devour's squandering. If he wasn't in a desperate situation, Yun didn't plan to use the heavenly domain star essence. However, Devour was in an awkward situation. The two secondary heaven-breaking divine weapons had forced him to retreat, and he had to retreat to the black vortex behind him. Although Devour had tried to use his devouring power to resist, he couldn't do anything because of the interference from the two secondary heaven-breaking divine weapons. "Get your ass in there." Fu Yu's laughed, looking at Devour, who was retreating, his eyes filled with ridicule. However, Fu Yu's face stiffened shortly. A terrifying beast's roar arose from deep inside the space vault. The roar was full of anger and impatience. At the same time, the suction force from the black vortex in the space vault increased several times in just a blink of an eye. Fu Yu's, who had finally stabilized his body with great difficulty, did not pay attention for a moment and flew straight towards the black spiral. No matter how much Fu Yu struggled, he could only slow down the speed of his body as he flew backwards. The meteor hammer and the patterned longsword were also affected by the terrifying suction force. They shivered and flew backward toward the black vortex, which relieved Devour's pressure. However, although the pressure from the two secondary heaven-breaking divine weapons was reduced, the suction force from the black vortex was too intimidating. Devour couldn't resist it, and his devouring power could only help him move his limbs a little bit. Grab the two secondary heaven-breaking divine weapons. Zhuowen's eyes fell on the meteor hammer and the patterned longsword that were affected by the black vortex. Devour roared, his right claw grabbing the two secondary heaven-breaking divine weapons. Chapter 2171. Trapped. The suction force of this black spiral is too intimidating. It's almost impossible to get rid of it. Zhuowen sighed. Then, his eyes fell on Fu Yu's, who was struggling to get closer to the black spiral. Murderous aura surged in Zhuowen's eyes. Since he couldn't get away from the black spiral, Yun had to collect some debts. Lightning fire prison. Devour roared. His body exploded with the two terrifying energies of extreme fire and extreme lightning. Lightning and fire intertwined, shooting toward Fu Yu's, who was still struggling. It was Devour's strongest attack. He had almost released all of his lightning and fire energy. After releasing the lightning and fire energy, Devour couldn't resist the suction force of the black spiral anymore. He was swallowed up. "You little bastard." Before Fu Yu's could react, he was wrapped up by the lightning and fire energy. The thunderfire energies were like the sharpest swords, mercilessly piercing into Fu Yu's acupuncture points. They continued to expand, like chains in a prison, locking Fu Yu's entire body. Moreover, the lightning and fire energy formed a lightning fence around Fu Yu's, forming an incomparably huge lightning and fire prison. If it were any other time, although the lightning and fire energy was tough to deal with, Fu Yu's could easily destroy it. But now, all of his god power was resisting the suction force of the black spiral. He didn't have the energy to resist this energy. The lightning and fire energy wreaked havoc in Fu Yu's body. He felt as if his internal organs were about to explode. You little bastard, you'd better remember this. Fu Yu faced the sky and roared. He didn't care about the suction force of the black spiral anymore. The god power in his body surged, expelling the lightning and fire energy wreaking havoc in his body. However, it was too late for Fu Yu to expel the energy. More than 70% of his body was badly burned. Fu Yu didn't even have time to heal before the black spiral swallowed him. When Fu Yu disappeared into the black spiral slowly dissipated and the fault in space returned to its original state. If the adventurers of the Southern Universe saw this, they would be absolutely stunned. This was the first time such a strange black spiral had appeared in the space fault. 3 days later, a dwarf old man stepped through the air and stopped outside the spatial rift. He frowned and said, "Zhuobrat's presence has completely vanished here." The dwarf old man's gaze fell on the interior of the spatial fault. His right hand continued to deduce, but in the end, he shook his head and said, "This is really unexpected. This kid has played with fire too much. He's even gotten himself into trouble. It'll be hard for me to explain myself when I return to the far west." This dwarf old man was naturally Old Man Wu Qing. Ever since Zhuan lured Qin Changxing and the others away, Old Man Wu Qing had emerged from the shielding formation. According to the agreement, the old man began to deal with the Devil Pearl sect. The ancestor of the demonic Pearl sect was not present, and the protective formation had been broken. There was no Void Heaven 8th stage expert overseeing the sect. Who in the demonic Pearl sect could stop a peak Void Heaven 8th stage expert like Old Man Wu Qing? It could be said that when Old Man Wu Qing took action, it was a one-sided slaughter. The disciples of the demonic Pearl sect either died or fled. Old Man Wu Qing had basically killed all the upper echelons of the sect. Of course, Old Man Wu Qing did not let the upper echelons of the sect that Qin Changxing and Fu Yu had brought with them go. Originally, Qin Changxing and the others should have retreated after such a huge matter had happened in the demonic Pearl sect. However, Old Man Wu Qing discovered that only Yang Zhonghui had returned. At that time, he knew that the situation was bad. After Old Man Wu Qing and Yang Zhonghui fought several hundred rounds, Yang Zhonghui was heavily injured and fled. Old Man Wu Qing did not continue to pursue. Instead, he followed Zhuowen's presence to the spatial fault. "I originally wanted to ask for some compensation, but it seems that's not quite possible now," Old Man Wu Qing said regretfully. Although Old Man Wu Qing was not too clear about the spatial fault, his intuition as an expert told him that the spatial fault was definitely not a good place. He could not possibly enter it for Zhuan. Forget it. Let's return to the far west first." Old Man Wu Qing stayed here for a while. In the end, he decided to leave the star field and return to the far west. The destruction of the Heaven and Earth sect, the Void-Piercing Peak, and the Demonic Pearl sect had completely spread throughout the star field. It had almost become something that everyone knew. Zhuowen's name was like thunder, spreading throughout the entire Great Brahma domain. Many cultivators knew that this kid had destroyed the High Heaven sect and the Dark Illusion sect in Eastern Universe, then went to Western Universe to destroy the Heaven and Earth sect and the Void-Piercing Peak. In the end, he arrived at the Southern Universe Demonic Pearl sect. Under the combined efforts of Qin Changxing and the other two ancestors, he had destroyed the Demonic Pearl sect. It was also during the battle of the Southern Universe Demonic Pearl sect that Zhuowen disappeared. Qin Changxing, Fu Yu, and Yang Zhonghui, the three ancestors who had once worked together to deal with Zhuowen, had Yang Zhonghui severely injured by an old dwarf and escaped. As for Qin Changxing and Fu Yu, just like Zhuowen, they had vanished without a trace, without the slightest bit of news. However, the most widespread rumor was that Qin Changxing and Fu Yu had fallen into a fault in space with Zhuan. It was unknown whether they were dead or alive. This rumor was said to have been personally witnessed by a cultivator who had passed by the fault in space. That cultivator had even recorded everything that had happened in the fault in space with a crystal ball, so many cultivators believed this rumor. Eastern Universe Heavenly Demon Island. Magatama stood at the top of the demon tower and looked in the direction of Southern Universe. He frowned slightly and said, "Emoji, is this rumor reliable? Did Zhuo Xiaoyu really fall into a fault in space?" Emoji took out a crystal ball and respectfully presented it, saying, "Ancestor, this is a recording of what happened. It doesn't seem to be fake." Magatama took the crystal ball and silently examined it. After a long silence, he finally sighed softly, "The heavens are truly jealous of geniuses. Zhuo Xiaoyu's talent was extraordinary. You would have definitely been a formidable figure in the future. What a pity." Northern Universe Half Moon Hall. On the balcony of an elegant palace, a beautiful woman in a moon-white dress held a crystal ball in her hand. Her beautiful eyes revealed a complicated expression. "Sectmaster, I don't believe that John is dead." The beautiful woman slowly turned around and looked at the cold and elegant woman behind her. Her beautiful eyes were filled with determination. This beautiful woman was naturally the #1 genius of Half Moon Hall, Tong Qim. Back then, at the 18th level of the trial ground, she had reached the top of the stairway with Zhuowen's help. She had always been grateful to Zhuowen. The cold and elegant woman was the sect master of Half Moon Hall, Waning Moon. Waning Moon shook her head, saying, "Chimate, the fault in space is very terrifying. Even an expert of the 8 steps of Void Heaven would find it difficult to leave if they fell into a fault in space, let alone Zhuowen. This Zhuowen is truly too impulsive. The way he does things is also a bit domineering. Although I am very surprised that this child was actually able to possess such a powerful lineup in a short dozen years, he is still too impulsive." Tong Qime retorted, "Sectmaster, if you were alone, could you have been like Brother Zhuo and come back after a dozen years and uprooted the Dark Illusion sect, High Heaven sect, Heaven and Earth sect, Void Cleansing Peak, and Demon Pearl sect?" Chapter 2172. The strange place. While Zhuowen's name had shaken the entire star area, Zhuowen, the main character of the story, slowly woke up. The instant he opened his eyes, Zhuowen abruptly stood up. The muscles in his entire body tensed up as he released his divine sense to scan the surroundings. But very quickly, a wave of intense pain came from his mind, causing Zhuowen to involuntarily growl. The moment he retracted his soul consciousness, the pain disappeared. Shaking his head, he knew that he couldn't use his soul consciousness in this place. Once he did, his soul consciousness would hurt. Thinking of this, Zhuowen didn't want to release his soul consciousness. Instead, he used his naked eyes to scan his surroundings. He found that he was in a desolate continent. Moreover, this continent wasn't big. It was just a little bigger than an ordinary meteorite. Zhuowen found that the 4 edges of this continent were connected by thick chains. On the other side of the chains, there were clouds lingering. He couldn't see what was on the other side of the chains. Zhuowen patted his head. Currently, he was in the clone Devour's human body. After being sucked in by the black spiral, Devour didn't have enough energy to maintain his huge body, so he had to revert to his human form. Zhuowen waved his sleeve, summoning his real body, Di Ling, and Zhang Jiqing from his body. Where are we?" Di Ling looked around and asked in surprise. Zhang Jiqing, Chao Tairen, and the other 3 looked at each other, their faces blank. This is the fault in the starry sky. According to the legends of the star domain, this fault in the starry sky is famous for being a dangerous place. Since ancient times, cultivators that have fallen into this fault in the starry sky have basically never been able to come out, said Zhuowen in a deep voice. Di Ling and the others fell into silence, their eyes filled with despair. Heaven will always leave a way out. Although this space fault is dangerous, I don't believe that we can't get out of here. However, Hun wasn't dejected at all. Instead, he summoned a green vortex with his right hand and said, "You guys enter the Tsanglan mystery realm to cultivate first. Leave the matter of finding a way out to me." King's spirit, Zhang Jiqing, and the others looked at each other, then bowed to Zhuowen and entered the Canglan's secret realm. Yun allowed the black-clothed Zhuowen to enter as well. The black-clothed Zhuowen's injuries were extremely serious. If he didn't treat his injuries in time, it was very likely that his foundation would be endangered. After putting away the Canglan's secret realm, Zhuowen's gaze once again fell on this continent. Zhuowen stayed on this continent for half a month. In this half a month, he turned this continent upside down, but he didn't find anything. It could be said that this continent was completely barren. Nothing existed on it. Although Zhuowen did not give up and searched a few more times, the result was still the same. Disappointed, Zhuowen turned his attention to the chains connecting the four edges of the continent. In the depths of the chains, there were clouds and mist lingering. It was impossible to tell what was in the depths of the chains. Let's go to the east side first. Zhuowen hesitated for a while, then stepped onto the east side of the chain and slowly walked forward. Because there was no way to use one's divine sense in this place, Zhuowen could only rely on his eyes to determine what was in front of him. The clouds and mist were too thick, and Zhuowen's range of vision was only about 3 meters. After walking for about half an hour, Zhuowen slowly came to a stop. This was because he found a thick stone wall 5 meters in front of the chains. Zhuowen came in front of the stone wall and reached out his right hand to touch it. He found that the stone wall was a little soft, and when he touched it, the stone wall moved slightly. This made Zhuowen feel suspicious. Zhuowen did not act rashly. Instead, he retreated. Next, Zhuowen went to the south and north side of the chains. At the end of the chains, he encountered the same strange stone wall. Only the west side of the chain is left. I hope it won't disappoint me. Zhuowen nervously stepped onto the west side of the chain and slowly moved forward. He was very clear that if the end of the west side of the chain was also a stone wall, then there was really no way out and he was really trapped here. Although he thought of using violence to break the stone wall at the end of the chain, he felt that the stone wall was not simple, so he did not act rashly. Just as Zhuowen was thinking about random things, the clouds and mist in front of Zhuowen suddenly dispersed. Soon after, Zhuowen found that there was no longer a stone wall in front of him, but another continent. This continent was almost exactly the same as the previous one. It was desolate and uninhabited, and the edges were connected by chains. The clouds and mist were hazy, and he could not see what was at the end of the chains. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed. He faintly had a guess, but he was not very sure if it was true or not. Using the previous method, he tried the remaining 3 directions of this continent and found the third continent on the south side of the chain. However, when Zhuowen wanted to follow the original chain and return to the original location, he discovered that the strange stone wall had appeared in the chain between the third and second continents. Is there someone controlling this place? Zhuowen frowned slightly, but his heart sank to the bottom. He was very clear that if these gaps in the continents were controlled by someone, it was simply wishful thinking for him to want to leave this place. What he was curious about was, who was in control of everything here? Kid, since the person behind the scenes is controlling everything, then you should follow that person's lead and see where the person behind the scenes wants to lead you. Xiao He took the thunder fire sword out of the spirit ring and said to Zhuowen in a deep voice. Zhuowen nodded. He grabbed the thunder fire sword with one hand, but his gaze was extremely solemn. Xiao He had obtained the thunder fire sword and absorbed a lot of resources from Zhuowen. His cultivation had risen very quickly, and his strength was no weaker than an ordinary Void Sky 7th-stage expert. Moreover, the Thunder Fire Sword's quality had reached the peak of Void Sky Divine Artifact, and it was comparable to the Supreme Glorious Sun Blade. If Xiao He had the opportunity, it was not impossible for it to evolve into a secondary Void Sky Divine Artifact. Following this, Zhuowen advanced step by step, holding the Thunder Fire Sword, and crossed continents along the chain. Zhuowen shuttled through the maze-like continents for half a month before he finally arrived in front of a canyon. The canyon was very large, and there were no dense clouds lingering around it. On both sides of the canyon, there were not mountains, but mountains of bones. Upon closer inspection, one could see that the mountains of bones on both sides of the canyon were like the ribs of some ancient beasts, lifelike and lifelike. Standing at the entrance of the canyon, Zhuowen frowned slightly. He smelled something unusual in this canyon. This canyon is not simple. Before you enter, I think you'd better refine those 2 secondary void sky divine artifacts first, Xiao He suddenly said. Zhuan nodded. He indeed had this intention. He was currently in the inner part of the starry sky fault. This was an unknown world, and no one knew what kind of dangers were lurking inside. Right now, increasing his own strength was naturally an urgent matter. Thinking of this, Zhuan waved his sleeve and threw out more than a dozen formation discs, setting up a powerful defensive formation around him. Chapter 2173. 9 Extinction Divine Runic Sword. Now, these 2 powerful secondary heaven-shattering divine tools were dim on the surface, and didn't have the might they had at the beginning. The reason for this was mainly because their owners weren't here, and they were also imprisoned by Zhuo Wen's formation. Zhuan was the first to release the runic sword. So, the moment the runic sword was released, it pierced towards Zhuan. It actually knew that Zhuan was an enemy. Without Chen Changxing's control, Zhuan wasn't afraid of the runic sword at all. Zhuowen's right hand formed a claw and grabbed onto the runic sword. No matter how hard the runic sword struggled, it couldn't break free. Then, Zhuowen opened his mouth and spat out a blazing divine flame that enveloped the runic longsword. However, the runic sword was extremely extraordinary. The instant Zhuowen's divine flames enveloped the runic sword, the runic patterns on the sword's surface lit up. Then, the divine flames were actually dispersed by the runic patterns. You actually managed to disperse my divine flames? Zhuan didn't believe it and spat out divine flames again. Moreover, he purposely strengthened the divine flames, but it still failed. Your main body's cultivation is only at the 5th step of the void sky realm. Your divine flames are too weak. Use the extreme flames. Xiao He reminded. Zhuan nodded and summoned the black-robed Zhuan. Borrowing the extreme flames, he once again enveloped the runic sword. This time, no matter how the runic sword struggled, it couldn't extinguish the extreme flames. Seeing this scene, Zhuowen's eyes lit up with joy. He hurriedly strengthened the extreme flames. The extreme flames were indeed powerful. Zhuan only used 10 days to refine Zhuowen's imprint on the runic sword. At the same time, Zhuan also engraved his own imprint on the runic sword. After successfully refining the runic sword, Zhuan learned that the runic sword's name was 9 Extinction Divine Runic Sword. Using the extreme Dao flame, Zhuan spent another 10 days to successfully refine Fu Yu's meteor hammer, which was called Space-Destroying Meteor. Generally speaking, using a secondary heaven-crushing divine tool required an enormous amount of divine power and divine sense. Even though Zhuowen's divine sense was extremely powerful, he could only use a secondary heaven-crushing divine tool once at most. Furthermore, he couldn't use his divine sense in this place, so Zhuan could only circulate his divine power. Thus, even though he had refined both of these secondary heaven-crushing divine tools, he could only use one of them in battle. However, when Zhuowen's divine sense became powerful enough in the future, he would be able to control 2 heaven-crushing artifacts at the same time. Zhuan was proficient in using swords, so he naturally chose to use the 9 Extinction Divine Rune Sword. Furthermore, due to the fact that divine sense could not be used here, the power of the 9 Extinction God Rune Sword would be greatly reduced. However, Zhuan was not worried at all. If he were to encounter Fu Yu's or Chen Changxing here, those 2 fellows would definitely be weaker than him. After all, no matter how powerful those 2 old fellows were, their strength would be greatly reduced if they couldn't use their divine sense. Furthermore, their secondary heaven-crushing divine tools were in his hands, so Zhuan was not afraid of those 2 old fellows. Putting away the space-destroying meteor, Zhuan slowly walked towards the canyon with the 9 Extinction Divine Rune Sword in hand. Under the control of Xiao He, the Thunder Fire Sword floated beside Zhuan, constantly vigilant of the surrounding dangers. After entering the canyon, Zhuan discovered that the ground of the canyon was actually paved with piles of white bones. The white, flat ground was eerie and terrifying. The silence in the canyon was frightening. Zhuan slowly walked forward, and he could only hear his own footsteps. This place was simply too quiet. Bush. When Zhuan reached the center of the canyon, the sound of something breaking through the air could be heard. Zhuan fiercely did a somersault, and immediately saw that there were more than 10 arrows piercing the ground where he was originally standing. If he had been a step slower, he would have been hit by the arrows. Furthermore, Zhuan discovered that although the arrows looked very ordinary, they actually pierced through the white bone ground with ease. This sharpness was a little too excessive. Zhuan had tested the toughness of the white bone floor before. The Thunderfire sword had needed to expend a lot of energy to pierce through the white bone floor. However, the 9 Extinction Divine Rune Sword in his hand was a secondary heaven-breaking divine weapon. Naturally, it could easily pierce through the white bone floor. However, how could an ordinary arrow be so sharp? Zhuan really could not understand. Could it be that this arrow was a secondary heaven-crushing divine tool? However, Zhuan did not feel any aura of a secondary heaven-crushing divine tool from the arrow. This arrow was just an ordinary weapon. However, Zhuan did not have the time to think too much about it. Instead, he rolled on the ground again. This was because even more arrows were shot at him from both sides of the Bone Mountains. Zhuan also discovered that there was a group of people on both sides of the Bone Mountains. This group of people attacked him as soon as they appeared, and Zhuan was extremely angry in his heart. With a cold snort, he unfurled his torch dragon wings and was about to fly towards the group of people on the Bone Mountains. However, the moment he unfurled his torch dragon wings, he discovered that the torch dragon wings were rapidly dissipating. What's going on? Zhuan's pupils shrank. Furthermore, he discovered that the divine energy in his body was actually gradually dissipating. More accurately, the divine energy in his body was being absorbed by the surrounding Bone Mountains. Bush. Arrows were shot at him again. Zhuan could only helplessly wave the 9 Extinction Divine Rune Sword in his hand. The sword light was like water, and the rain of arrows was completely blocked. I have to leave this canyon quickly. Zhuan no longer paid any attention to the group of people who ambushed him from the Bone Mountains. Instead, he stomped his right foot and immediately ran back. However, Zhuan soon discovered that an endless bone wall had appeared at the entrance of the valley at an unknown time. You can't get out. This is the king's territory. Since you've entered this place, there's no turning back. An indifferent voice came from both sides of the Bone Mountains. After that, Zhuan discovered that the arrows were no longer shooting at him, and more than 10 figures appeared behind him. There were men and women among these people. Their clothes were extremely tattered, but Zhuan could vaguely see that these people's clothes were definitely not ordinary. The leader was a cold and elegant woman. She sized up Zhuan from head to toe, and her beautiful eyes revealed a look of surprise. She said, "Fifth step Void Sky? I didn't expect that there would be such an expert who fell into the fault of the starry sky. No wonder you could dodge our arrow rain." Zhuan's eyes narrowed. The cultivation of this group of people was not high. There were even true gods among them. The cold-looking woman in front of him was the highest, and her cultivation was only 3rd step Void Sky. However, for some reason, when these people faced Zhuan, they were not afraid at all. It was as if they did not care that Zhuan's cultivation was higher than theirs. "Big Sister Shiping, what do you plan to do with this person? His cultivation is higher than ours. When the time comes for him to adapt to this place, I'm afraid he'll be quite a threat to you," a young man whispered to the cold-looking woman. Chapter 2174. Lin Shipingzhuan frowned as he silently sized up the cold woman in front of him. He did not answer her directly. The cold woman's eyes grew colder as she said, "If you don't answer, don't blame us for taking action." As she spoke, the people behind her drew their bows and aimed their arrows at Zhuan, ready to shoot at any time. Zhuan looked at the arrows aimed at him with apprehension. He was sure that these arrows were definitely not heaven-piercing divine artifacts, or even divine artifacts. They were just ordinary weapons. However, this ordinary weapon was actually sharper than many Void Sky divine artifacts. Zhuan could not figure out what was going on. He was sure that these arrows did not exist in the outside world, or he had never seen them before. "Everyone, let's talk nicely. I've just entered this place, so I don't know the rules yet. I hope everyone can tell me what this place is? Zhuan said with a smile. The cold woman said indifferently, you need to submit to me first. I'll tell you when the time comes. Zhuan's eyes immediately turned cold. With his personality, it was naturally impossible for him to submit to others, not to mention that the other party was a woman. Sorry, I'm used to being free and idle. I don't like to bow and scrape to others, Zhuan said indifferently. As soon as these words came out, an intense killing intent enveloped Zhuan. Looks like you're refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. The cold woman sneered. With a wave of her hand, the dozen people behind her drew their bows and were about to shoot arrows. A sword light suddenly flashed past as the cold woman pulled out a short knife and slashed behind her. Only then did she realize that a divine sword covered in lightning and fire was floating behind her. The group of subordinates behind the cold woman had their tendons cut off. They fell to the ground and screamed miserably. The cold woman's short knife slashed at the lightning and fire sword. Her jade feet felt weak and she could not help but take a few steps back. Her face was pale. Just as the cold-looking woman was about to exert her strength, a long sword engraved with runes landed on the woman's neck. The sharp sword chi left a fresh wound on her fair neck. If you don't want to die, don't act rashly. Put down the dagger in your hand, Zhuan said calmly. The cold and elegant woman put down her dagger and turned around, calmly looking at Zhuan. I really didn't expect you to be able to use your divine sense in this place. How did you do it? Zhuan shook his head and didn't say anything. Actually, he couldn't use his divine sense. The reason why the Thunderfire sword could attack from a distance was not because of his divine sense. It was completely under the control of Xiaohe. Of course, he naturally wouldn't expose this matter. Since this woman misunderstood that he, Zhuan, could use divine sense, then he would let her continue to misunderstand. Tell me about this place, Zhuan said calmly. The cold and elegant woman's beautiful eyes flickered. She sighed and said, let's go back to our territory first. This hunting bone mountain is full of danger. It's not safe here. You don't have to worry. Since you can use your divine sense, killing us is like squashing an ant. So you don't have to worry about me cheating. Hearing this, Zhuan's eyes flickered, but he still let go of the cold and elegant woman. Although Zhuan couldn't use his divine sense, he still had the absolute advantage with Xiaohe. Boy, carry this dragon master on your back. This dragon master is about to die. The Thunderfire sword came to Zhuan's side and transmitted a message to Zhuan. What's going on? Could it be that you are also being suppressed in this canyon? Zhuan took out a piece of cloth, tied the Thunderfire sword, and carried it on his back. Nonsense, this canyon is too strange. This dragon master's energy is also constantly collapsing. I can't continue to act recklessly. Otherwise, this dragon master will be exposed. Xiaohe said. Zhuan was speechless. This guy really couldn't be handsome for more than 3 seconds. Fortunately, the cold and elegant woman and others now thought that Zhuan could use his divine sense. In addition, this cold and elegant woman's subordinates were restrained by the Thunderfire sword, so Zhuan wasn't worried about the cold and elegant woman's suspicions. Although the cold and elegant woman was quite puzzled about Zhuan carrying the Thunderfire sword on his back, she didn't care much. She reorganized more than 10 injured subordinates and simply bandaged their wounds. Let's go back now. I will tell you the details when we go back. The cold and elegant woman said to Zhuan, and then walked straight into the depths of the canyon. As for the cold and elegant woman's subordinates, they all looked at Zhuan in fear. They weren't afraid that Zhuan's cultivation was higher than theirs. They were mainly afraid that Zhuan could use his divine sense in this place. With his divine sense, it would be too easy for him to kill them. They weren't even on the same level. The cold and elegant woman was extremely cautious. When she was heading into the canyon, she tried her best to stay close to the surrounding bone mountains as cover. Obviously, this cold and elegant woman had more survival experience than Zhuan. It was no wonder that she could become the leader of this group of people with her identity as a woman. Moreover, after interacting with her along the way, Zhuan also knew that this woman's name was Lin Shiping. She was a disciple of the Half Moon Hall. Back then, when she was training, she accidentally fell into this starry sky fault and ended up in this strange canyon. The canyon was very long and narrow. After passing through the bone mountains, they came to a bone forest. Every bone tree was extremely long, as if it was connected to the heavens. Moreover, the bone forest was filled with a thick smell of blood. The moment they walked into the bone forest, Juan realized that the ground under his feet wasn't soil, but flesh and blood. Juan became even more vigilant. This place was too strange, and a trace of uneasiness rose in his heart. After about an hour, the cold and elegant woman led the group to a hidden cave. From the outside, this cave was actually the skull of a giant beast. Its bloody mouth was the entrance to the cave. "Hurry up and go in." The cold and elegant woman looked around and hurriedly waved her hand. More than 10 people hurriedly entered the cave, like birds startled by the twang of a bow. When Juan saw the cold and elegant woman and the others being so cautious, he was extremely puzzled. Along the way, although there were many strange things, they didn't seem to have encountered any threats. Why were they so vigilant and even a little frightened? Lin Shiping observed Zhuowen's expression and naturally saw the puzzled look on his face. She said in a low voice, "You're new here, so you don't know how scary this place is. I'll tell you later. For now, come in first." Zhuowen nodded and entered the cave. The moment Zhuowen stepped into the cave, Lin Shiping formed a seal with her hands. Immediately, an invisible ripple appeared at the entrance of the cave. Only then did Zhuowen notice that there were more than 10 palm-sized beast bones placed at the entrance of the cave. These beast bones emitted a lustrous white light and actually formed a simple defensive array. What a strange energy. It's actually much more magical than the array discs outside. Chapter 2175. The Bone World. Zhuowen came to the front of the formation. Just as he was about to extend his right hand, Lin Shiping grabbed it. "What do you want?" Lin Shiping looked at Zhuowen nervously. "This beast bone is really strange. I want to see it. Also, your formation is too simple and crude." "It's a waste of the beast bone," Zhuowen said calmly. Lin Shiping blushed. She was the one who set up the formation. Now that Zhuowen said it was useless, she was naturally flustered and exasperated. "Among us, I'm the only one who knows a little about formations. It's already good enough that I can set up such a formation. In this bone forest, there are many small tribes that live in the open. Not to mention, they have formations to protect them," Lin Shiping said unhappily. Zhuowen's expression changed. "There were indeed many cultivators here. I know a little about formations. This defensive formation is too crude. I'll help you set it up again," Zhuowen said calmly. Lin Shiping looked at Zhuowen from head to toe. Her beautiful eyes were filled with doubt. "You're a god formation master?" "If I can't do it, you can set it up again," Zhuowen said with a smile. Lin Shiping nodded. Although she didn't really believe Zhuowen's formation skills, she didn't dare to offend him too much when she thought of what he had just done. After getting Lin Shiping's agreement, Nguyen came to the entrance of the cave. He quickly pointed his right hand and formed a seal. Lin Shiping was shocked to find that the defensive formation she had painstakingly set up was broken by Zhuowen in an instant. This guy is really a god formation master." Lin Shiping was stunned at first. Then, her beautiful eyes lit up with joy. Lin Shiping had stayed in this world for a long time. In this world, formations were much more important and powerful than a person's strength. With formations, one could definitely obtain the best resources in this world. Cultivators from other tribes would also come here to seek protection and increase the strength of their tribes. The strength of a formation actually represented the strength of one's force. In this world, as long as one had a powerful formation, one could quickly accumulate a powerful force. It was completely different from the outside world. What the outside world saw was not the formation, but the high-end strength. The stronger the cultivator, the more the number of cultivators, and the stronger the force. Of course, the protective formation was also indispensable, but it was not as important as it was in this world. Zhuowen's Array Dao standard had already reached the terrifying 7th level. Fiddling with array formations was simply too easy. It only took him 15 minutes to slightly modify the foundation of Lin Shiping's formation. The defensive formation, which was originally only a level 2, transformed into a level 3 formation. Due to the uniqueness of the beast bones, the level 3 formation he set up was far more powerful than a level 3 formation set up by an ordinary formation disc. Its power was close to that of a level 4 formation. This made Jun click his tongue in wonder. He was a little excited about the beast bones. He knew very well that the beast bones could increase the power of formations. As long as he used the beast bones to set up formations in the future, the power would definitely be much stronger than the ones he had set up before. Of course, with Zhuowen's current level 7 formation master skills, it was naturally possible for him to set up a level 7 defensive formation. However, Lin Shiping had too few beast bones. There were only a dozen of them, and they were too simple. With Zhuowen's skills, he could barely set up a level 3 formation. If there were more beast bones, or if the beast bones were more powerful, he would be able to set up a more powerful formation. It should be known that the formation discs in Zhuowen's spirit ring were extremely complicated. There were formation discs made up of thousands of formation flags. However, these beast bones were too simple. One beast bone was equivalent to one formation flag at most. If Zhuon had hundreds or thousands of beast bones, he could use the beast bones to make formation discs. By then, Zhuon would be able to set up a higher level formation. Moreover, the formation's power would be much stronger than the formation set up by the ordinary formation discs he had. What level of formation master are you? After modifying the formation, Zhuon turned around and saw Lin Shiping's passionate gaze and question. I'm a level 5 formation master. Zhuon did not plan to tell the truth. This world was too foreign to him. Lin Shiping might not be trustworthy. Therefore, he naturally could not reveal his background. You're a level 5 formation master? Lin Shiping's beautiful eyes were filled with joy. She hurriedly bowed to Zhuon respectfully and said, Senior, Shiping has offended you. Please don't take offense. As she spoke, Lin Shiping looked at Zhuon anxiously and said in a low voice, Senior, can you stay in our tribe? Although there aren't many people in our tribe, as long as you stay in our tribe, we will definitely be able to develop into a large tribe in the future. Moreover, we will follow your lead. Zhuon frowned slightly and said in a deep voice, I'm new here. Can you tell me what this place is first? Previously, you said that this is the territory of the king. What's that about? Senior, look at my memory. I almost forgot that you're new here. Actually, it's like this. Lin Shiping slapped her forehead. Ever since she knew that Zhuon was a level 5 formation master, Lin Shiping was extremely enthusiastic. Obviously, she really wanted Zhuon to stay in their tribe. Lin Shiping explained in detail and Zhuon listened attentively. After a while, Zhuon had a rough understanding of the situation here. This was the inner part of the Starry Sky Fault. Anything that fell into the Starry Sky Fault would enter this world. The cultivators who left this world here called it the Skeleton World. This name was indeed very suitable for the scenery here. Basically, all the scenery here was formed by skeletons. The entrance to the Skeleton World was the entrance to the valley with mountains of skeletons on both sides. Once one entered the valley, one would truly step into the Skeleton World. Moreover, once one entered the Skeleton World, one would not be able to leave. In other words, the moment one stepped into the Skeleton World, the entrance to the Skeleton World would be permanently sealed. There was no way out at all. Of course, when Lin Shiping explained the Skeleton World, Zhuon asked what would happen if one did not enter the Skeleton World and stayed outside the valley. Lin Shiping's beautiful eyes were filled with fear. She said that the cultivators who did not enter the Skeleton World would become skeletons within a month and become the scenery of the Skeleton World. There were many cultivators who were left behind in the Starry Sky Fault in the Skeleton World. In the Starry Sky Fault, cultivators could not use their divine sense. Once they used it, they would have a splitting headache. If they used it recklessly, their divine sense would collapse and they would die. In the beginning, many people died because of this. Later on, cultivators who entered this place did not dare to use their divine sense. After entering the skeleton world, the divine power in the cultivator's body would gradually disappear, just like Zhuowen's current state. Although his divine power was strong, there was always a devouring force coming from the depths of the ground under his feet, devouring Zhuowen's divine power. According to this devouring speed, Zhuowen knew that it would not be long before the divine power in his body completely disappeared. Of course, it was not that he was crippled. It was just that his divine power was completely devoured. As long as he left this strange skeleton world to the outside world and absorbed enough starry sky energy, his divine power would naturally recover slowly. Chapter 2176. The skeleton world was not big, and the most scarce thing here was shelter. Lin Shiping and the others lived much better than most people in the skeleton world. At least they had a cave to shelter them from the wind, rain, and wild beasts. Most people lived in the open. Once they encountered danger, they might not even know how they died. There were natural disasters and man-made disasters in the skeleton world. The so-called natural disasters were the bad weather here. The wind and rain in this world had a strong power to corrode flesh and blood. It was called the bloody wind and rain by the people here. The cultivators who lived in the outside world would be easily corroded by the wind and rain in the skeleton world, turning them into skeletons. Only the caves formed by the skeletons of the giant beasts in the skeleton world could withstand the bloody wind and rain and protect the lives of the people in the caves. Moreover, the caves in the skeleton world were very scarce. Therefore, many desperados would attack the weaker tribes nearby with caves without caring about their lives. This was a man-made disaster. After listening to Lin Shiping's description, Zhuowen had a general understanding of the skeleton world. You mentioned the king's territory before. This skeleton world is the king's territory you mentioned, right? Then what is the king? Zhuowen asked. The king is the king of the skeleton world. I have never seen the king, but I can clearly feel the king's existence. I also know that the king has been observing us. Lin Shiping said. Zhuowen, on the other hand, was baffled. Lin Shiping's words were baffling. Who exactly was the king? She didn't even explain it clearly. You still have divine power in your body, so you can't feel it. The moment your divine power completely dissipates in the skeleton world, you will be able to feel the king's aura. The king is omnipresent. We can't go against him at all. Lin Shiping said in a low voice, but Zhuowen was even more confused. Is there no exit to the skeleton world? Zhuowen asked. Lin Shiping looked at Zhuowen strangely and shook her head. You think too much. Since ancient times, no one has ever left the skeleton world successfully. There is no exit here. Zhuowen frowned and said coldly, Then how can I meet the king you speak of? Lin Shiping sighed. It's almost impossible to meet the king. Only the chief of the Bone Halberd tribe, the largest tribe in the bone world, can contact the king. However, the Bone Halberd tribe is a forbidden area in the bone world. Ordinary people can't enter at all. Zhuowen's eyes lit up. He had a feeling that the king mentioned by Lin Shiping was definitely the key to leaving the skeleton world. He couldn't stay in the skeleton world for the rest of his life. He still had a lot of things to do. By the way, where did you get the animal bones to set up the formation? Zhuowen asked. Oh, we got them by hunting the undead here. Every undead has one or even several of these animal bones with special energy. The effect of using these animal bones to set up the formation is much better than the formation flags in the outside world, Lin Shiping said. Zhuowen nodded and his eyes flickered. He planned to go to the Bone Halberd tribe this time. Of course, he wouldn't give up on the animal bones. Such a good material for setting up the formation, the more the better for Zhuowen. If he had the chance to leave the skeleton world in the future, even if he wasn't a level 8 formation master, he could set up a level 8 formation with the formation discs made from these animal bones. Let's feel the breath of the king that Lin Shiping calls first. Zhuowen found a place in the cave and sat down with his legs crossed. He closed his eyes and waited for the divine power in his body to disappear completely. With the speed at which his divine power was disappearing, it should be completely gone in 3 days. At that time, he wanted to feel what kind of existence the so-called king was. Lin Shiping also guessed Zhuowen's plan, so she tactfully didn't disturb Zhuowen. As for Lin Shiping's subordinates, their right hands were badly injured and they were busy recovering. Naturally, they didn't dare to disturb Zhuowen. 3 days later, the last trace of divine power in Zhuowen's body disappeared completely. Then, a black mist rose from under Zhuowen's feet and immediately enveloped Zhuowen. This person is going to be baptized by the king. Lin Shiping and the others knelt on the ground and shivered. Inside the black mist, when the last beam of divine power disappeared from Zhuowen's body, Zhuowen felt a strange force covering him. Then, a pair of scarlet eyes appeared in his head. This pair of eyes was too big. Just one of them was much bigger than an ordinary life-bearing planet. Zhuowen lifted his head, gazing at the pair of scarlet eyes. His face was as calm as an ancient well. He said faintly, "Are you the king of the skeleton world?" The scarlet eyes looked at Zhuowen indifferently, talking in a vague voice. "Not. Devour. Are you Devour's clone?" Zhuowen's face changed. He gazed at the pair of scarlet eyes. He didn't expect that this guy knew about Devour. "Did you purposely suck us into the space vault?" Zhuowen's expression was ugly. When the black spiral had mysteriously appeared in the space vault, Zhuowen had felt that something was wrong. Moreover, when the suction force of the black spiral had increased, he had heard a terrifying beast roar. He was afraid that this so-called king was behind all of this. "If you want to get out, come to the corpse heavenly road." As soon as the scarlet eyes finished speaking, they slowly dissipated. Zhuowen abruptly opened his eyes, and the black mist around him also completely dissipated. Zhuowen then realized that his forehead was covered in cold sweat. The aura of the pair of scarlet eyes was so intimidating that even Zhuowen felt intimidated. What a familiar aura. The owner of those eyes is definitely Devour. Moreover, it's not an ordinary Devour. Zhuowen's eyes darkened. At the moment he sensed the aura of those scarlet eyes, Zhuowen knew that the so-called king of the skeleton world was Devour. Moreover, this Devour was much stronger than the sky-devouring demon emperor that Zhuowen had met. It wasn't an ordinary Devour. "I can only go to the corpse heavenly road to find that guy." Zhuowen frowned. Although he was sure that the king of the skeleton world was Devour, he still felt that this so-called king wasn't simple. However, he didn't have a choice. If he wanted to get out, he had to find that so-called king. "Miss Shiping, do you know where the corpse heavenly road is?" Zhuowen turned around, looking at Lin Shiping, who was bewildered. "You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.